Good evening and welcome to the Development Review Commission on December 12th. The Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has the power to recommend and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, business, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that's therefore considered to be in the best interests of public health, safety, and general welfare. I'd like to begin tonight by introducing the members of the commission. To my left is Andrew Johnson, Bill Amorosi, Scott Sumners. To my right, Vice Chair David Lyon, Mike DiDomenico, and Tom Brown. From staff, we have Cynthia Jarrett, Obinia Kingsley, Diana Kaminsky, Suparna Dasgupta, and Karen Stovall. The first item on our agenda tonight is the consideration of meeting minutes from the November 14th study session and regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner DiDomenico and seconded by Commissioner Amorosi. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes 6-0 with all members present voting. The next items we're going to consider are the consent agenda. We will consider these motion without discussion unless someone from the audience is interested in hearing the case. Case number 2, At Home, PL 17035, and the Hayden Flour Mill case, PL 170304. Is there anyone from the audience who'd like to speak on either of these cases? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the consent agenda, which includes items listed as number 3 and 8 on the published agenda.
Second?
Madam Chair, I would like actually to break those items out separately if possible, because I will need to abstain on one item and I'd like to vote on the other.
Okay.
I'll amend my motion to just include advertised item on the agenda number 3, which is the at-home case.
Okay, all those, is there a second for that one?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner DiDomenico and seconded by Commissioner Sumner for consent approval on at home. All those in favor? Opposed, and that passes 7-0. Item number 8. Is there a motion for consent on number 8?
Madam Chair, I move approval on consent of the Hayden Flour Mill item number 8.
Or second? It's been moved by Commissioner DiDomenico, seconded by Commissioner Johnson. All those in favor? And that passes 6-0 with Vice Chair Lyon not voting. There is one change to the agenda due to the public response, and because we have a full agenda, we are moving item 6, Quick Quack Car Wash, to, we will hear that case after the Muse number 7. So we have a full house. I would ask if you are here to make public comment, first of all, you need to fill out the cards in the back. You will have 2 minutes to speak. There are lights here that will come on. When the light turns yellow, we'll wrap up. When the light turns red, you will need to leave the podium. And again, I see there are a lot of people here. If you have sent an email or sent a letter, we have that. I would ask you to be brief in making your comments. It's not necessary for everyone to stand up and say the same thing. At this commission, we do not allow adding on minutes, so every individual who speaks will speak on their own behalf for the allotted 2 minutes. We will not tolerate any disruption from the audience. We have security available, so please just it's a public meeting and respect everyone here. I think those are my rules for right now. So the first case is Farmer Arts District.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Obina Kingsley. I'm a planner 2 here with the City of Tempe. Farmer Arts District Parcel 1, Lot 1 is a new multifamily development that also has ground floor commercial and is located on the northeast corner of Farmer Avenue and University Drive. The applicant is proposing a development plan review that consists of a site plan, elevations, and a landscape plan. The applicant is proposing 171 dwelling units, which is the remaining amount of dwelling units that can be placed on parcel 1 per the existing PAD, which was established with a maximum density allowance of 50 dwelling units per acre. The development is currently shown at 6 stories with a building height of 85 feet. They're proposing a lot coverage of 69.1%. There's a 16% landscape coverage as well, and the setbacks exceed the standards established by the existing PAD. So the front, or I should say exceed or set at the exact number. The front is 0 feet. The street side setback is 12 feet. The rear is set at 24 feet 8 inches, and the east side setback is set at 14 feet 16 inches. The commercial component of the project is fronts University Drive, and is 1,100 square feet. Most of the parking for this project is actually located within the garage of the building, and there are also 9 on-street parking spaces available per the project. And currently, the project is not meeting the standards for this site, but staff has added a condition in which that will be addressed, that officially will be addressed at a later time. With that, staff is recommending approval of this project. The project will meet the development standards required under the zoning development code. It would also meet the projected, or will meet the approval criteria for a development plan review. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have at this time.
Questions of staff? Okay. Seeing none, then the applicant make their presentation, please.
Thank you. For the record, Charles Humel on behalf of the applicant, P.O. Box 1833, Tempe, Arizona 85280. I'm here with Todd Marshall in the blue suit and blue shirt, and together we are the developers of the Farmer Arts District and specifically this project before you today. I recognize that there are a significant number of cards here this evening, but most of them for other cases, and Obina has given you a presentation as well. I'll go through my presentation. I'll try to skip the facts that Obina has already covered and then answer questions for you as well. I think you're all familiar with the location, but the location of the Farmer Arts District is from University to approximately 3rd Street on Farmer. Specifically, the lot we're talking about today is Lot 1, and that's next to the Whole Foods that's under construction today at University and Farmer. You can see in this picture the orange site is the site that we're talking about today. It looks very different today than the renderings that you've seen from Obina, that you'll see from us. It has been for some time a chain-linked vacant piece of property. This is industrial in its origin. It's always been along the citrus packing plant line, and for all of our lives, it has been industrial in nature, except for the buildings that we've started to change. When we first started on this project, what you see before you is a pretty standard condition. Today, portions of it look like this. Again, before, after. Before, after. We've worked hard on both, and actually all sides of the property to provide important pedestrian access, understanding that the building that we're creating works not just for the residents of our building, but also the people walking by it. This is what the sidewalk in front of the site looks like today. When we're done, it will look very much like this. In fact, this is a shot just north of our site that we built. This is the residence on Farmer, and you can see that we've taken lots of care at the ground level with landscaping, with enhanced pavers, with wider sidewalks, with better lighting. Again, before and after. As we move into this third phase of construction, the same sidewalk materials, the same landscape materials, the same landscape philosophy will apply. Again, these are some of the images that exist today. We've designed Farmer Arts to be an important part of the neighborhood. We've put our driveways, in fact, for 6th and 7th Street to act like real streets, even though they're not. They're in the alignment for pedestrian purposes of 6th and 7th. It also reduces the number of cars who are making turning movements into driveways on Farmer. We think that enhances the pedestrian activity. The first building we built was Encore on Farmer. When we came to the DRC, some of you were probably here, some of you probably weren't, but this is the project that was approved. This is the project that we built. And we're proud that this also received our Coscordia Award, which is an Arizona Forward Award for Environmental Excellence. We then moved on to the second phase. This is the project that we brought before the DRC. That's the project that got built. It sits there today, and we've seen pictures of it even in this presentation. For Lot 1, we've taken a bit of a different approach. Some of you were here a year or so ago when we brought a different building in, and that project was withdrawn, and we've come back with a different version. This one is largely 6 stories with a 7th-story mezzanine on the north end. We've worked hard to provide a unique building in what would otherwise be a long and rectangular site. Many people probably would have tried to make one long rectangle. We didn't do that. We've purposely broken the site up and broken the building up to provide shade. In addition to having a building with great design, again, we've really tried to focus, and I'll go through these quickly because we've already talked about it, but we've really tried to provide pedestrianscape on all 4 sides of this building, which is pretty rare for Tempe. In the center of those 4 pods, we have 3 different areas. 2 of them are on the 2nd floor. You'll see those on the right, and those are for amenities. And the 3rd is at the ground floor. You'll see that in another slide in just a moment. Again, it's a unique shaped building. You can kind of start to see from this angle how that will look. It's important to note, though, most people won't ever see it from this angle because you're looking at it from a distance. You'll see it coming probably north and south on Farmer. These are some images of how the building will look when it's complete. This is looking from University towards the site, so you're looking down Farmer and down University. You can see that Whole Foods and the parking garage behind us are both taller than we are. Again, we've used hard surfaces, brick on the ground floor. We've tried to break up the design and make this a truly interesting building fitting of the other 2 buildings on Farmer. Streetscape is the same. This is a plaza area on the ground floor. So that's the basic presentation. I know that you've already received both a packet and a presentation. Are there questions that I can answer?
Questions, Commissioner Dina Medica?
Looking at this perspective, what you referred to as the 7th floor mezzanine feature,
Yes.
I like it.
Thank you.
So go back. So I like how this looks from a distance. Now go back to 2 slides earlier. I like it better than that. I'd love to see that mezzanine feature repeated or moved to the more important hard corner of the University and Farmer intersection. I don't know if it's meant to be a transition in height, but since the project to the north, your residence's project is shorter, lower anyway, it probably doesn't seem like it's a transition. But I like it. It gives some visual interest to the top of the building. So if that's possible,
Thank you. We think it adds visual interest as well. There's been a lot of discussion as to which end it should go on. I think having it is a benefit to the building and its unique appearance. We don't object to moving it to the north end, or to the south end from the north end, or leaving it on the north end. Either way, I think having it is a benefit. Deciding which end it went on is not consequence to us.
if staff later on wants to weigh in on if there's a preference or a reason, that's fine. You could, though I'm sure there'll be other points to respond to.
Vice Chair Lyon.
Yeah, same comment. I was actually going to ask what purpose the mezzanine serves.
It's really designed for architectural interest, to make the building a little more unique.
Occupiable?
It's occupiable as a mezzanine, so it's not its own space. It will be part of the unit below it. I suppose that theoretically could change depending on how Tempe updates its building code over the next year or so. As you may know, that's one of the issues that's addressed in future building codes. But as of today, it would be a mezzanine.
Yeah, so if it's part of a unit, it makes sense to me that it's north-facing, but if it's an architectural feature, I think it makes sense on the south side. So I can see that. I can see why you'd have a discussion over that.
Other questions or comments, the applicant at this time? Commissioner Brown.
I want to be sure we don't ask the wrong questions or maybe drift a little bit aside. What exactly are we approving today? The design and are there any interpretations here? Is this already?
What we are voting on today is the design plan.
So the PAD already has this height and what's the word I'm thinking of?
Yes, yes.
The entitlements are already.
It does not require a PAD amendment. That's why it's a design plan only. Okay. Vice Chair.
If I could quibble just a little more. Personal preference, I'm not super excited about EIFS with score lines in it. Any openness to an alternate material there, some sort of metal panel or some other treatment?
We've tried to use alternate materials in different ways. We have a lot of brick on the ground floor. We have the 4 different buildings as opposed to one long one, so we have a lot more skin than most buildings do. We have inset the, so as you look at this, both the first layer of gray is inset and the window is inset even further. A lot of projects have said no, they don't want to do that, but that's something that we agreed to do. I think it creates interesting shade lines. It has some solar benefit as well, but I also think it provides interesting architecture. We have worked hard to provide balconies in unique places. Are we open to, we're always open to ideas. I guess I would say a couple of things. We think that we have already designed a fairly expensive building and we're concerned about cost. To the extent that you wanted us to explore other materials, we'd ask that you do it with a condition that would allow us to add those materials with staff as we go through the construction document phase.
Fair enough.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Sumner.
Thank you. Just a comment. I really appreciate the focus on the pedestrian experience, and I can see from the other projects that are there existing today that you've paid a lot of attention and actually invested a lot in that. And my 16-year-old daughter, who doesn't know much about design, notices it too, so that's a plus. That's always great. The other thing I just note is most of the time the renderings look better than the real life thing, but in this case somehow I don't know if your renderings were poor in the beginning or what, but the buildings that are there, Encore especially, look great in real life. So nice job.
I appreciate those comments. I'd like to take credit for all of them, although the truth is that Todd and I both take a lot of pride in having the buildings be what they say they will be. I couldn't do it without Todd. Todd has an attention to detail that is second to none. Mr. Marshall behind me. He really enjoys when I speak about him in public hearings as well.
Johnson.
I just have a couple comments, and I have to say I'm disappointed in 2 things, I think, with this project. And one is that the originally approved project didn't get built. I really liked that project, and I'm sad that that didn't happen. The other one is that, and we spoke briefly about this, you can address it if you'd like or not, but along University, I think that there's a real opportunity for retail component along there, and I understand that there's certain parking issues that need to be overcome But I think that having that as, and I just want to put it out there, that having that all as retail would be an improvement over having an amenity just for the residents on University itself.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We loved the first building too, and we really wanted it, but we understand that's part of the process, and it didn't work. We came back and we tried to find a design that was equally nice. It's a substantially fewer number of units, but we think it's still a beautiful project in its own right. As it relates to the ground floor, we have designed that in such a way that we could add additional restaurant space. You're right, there's a problem with that, and that is today, the way the code sits, we'd need more parking. That's something the city is working to address. They've hired a consultant, SOM, I'm sure you know, is one of the finest in the nation as it comes to architecture and consulting. They're a top-rate firm. We think that they'll address that and look for less parking in these types of areas. If that's the case, and we've had lots of discussion with your staff, we're going to build it and put the infrastructure in, so if the code changes, much like Mr. Amorosi, I think, I missed part of that discussion, but it sounded like that's sort of the issue Mr. Amorosi was speaking of. And we agree, we want to have a place for people, but we have really worked hard to make sure that the site is not vehicular dominated. Making decisions like putting 2 different buildings with 1 driveway is not something a lot of apartment builders are willing to do. We did it because we think that the commitment is to being a pedestrian location. The reason that we've spent so much time and energy on the ground floor and those materials is because we want this to be a place that's dominated by people. Not just our own residents, but also the other people in the area. So we will keep that in mind. We've planned ahead to make that space comply with the building code to do those kinds of things if, in fact, the code changes. We want those people. We just don't want those vehicles. We think that is a good compromise.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Brown.
You just mentioned a moment ago. Sorry. You just mentioned a moment ago that the ground floor, you're planning for a restaurant. Is it an amenity space at this time for the residents?
1,000 square feet of it is retail space of some kind. It's not planned, obviously, at this stage. You would have a restaurateur, nor do we. Other space is currently amenity space.
Okay.
As we go through the construction document phase, we'll solve that issue, hopefully, working with the city. There are also units on the ground floor, so I'm not sure which of the spaces you're talking about. There are 2 differences, many differences, but one of the 2 of the differences that are between this project and the one that Mr. Johnson discussed earlier is that previously, in the previous version, we had some of the garage screened, put cars right up to it. In this case, we went through and put units on the ground floor as well, so there's a pedestrian experience throughout. Whether you're on University or Farmer, there's something happening in those buildings at every occasion, which is beyond what the TOD would require.
Yeah, I know from walking past it that that's actually quite nice on the 2 buildings that you've already completed.
Thank you.
On attachment 46, it is labeled retail. Is that just there's a slight contradiction there, but either one will be fine.
It has changed as we've gone through the process. This is not the case that we first filed with the city, nor is it ever. I think there's a healthy back and forth with the staff, and frankly, in this case, as in most cases, the project becomes better as a result of it. So there may be something from one of the earlier submittals to the city that would be different about that.
I mean, I think either one's okay as far as the use and so forth. I guess my only comments on the building is it's a little taller than the other buildings, and there are some 1- and 2-story units users across the street. Have there been any discussions or any public meetings where they voiced any problem with the 6-story building across the street from their 1-story?
My understanding is that the neighborhood next to us, Phil Yates is here. I spoke with him a couple of times, several times during this process. He's here today. I'll let him speak for himself. Manjula Vaz is here somewhere. She has a client who has a project across the street. We have not only discussed the case, but gone back and forth regarding the landscape palette. Other than Mr. Yates, I think that throughout this process, we've heard lots of compliments. I'm unaware of any opposition on the record at this moment.
And I will state back on the idea of the renderings versus the buildings. When you first built the 2 buildings that are occupied now, they did have a certain boxiness to them, but the trees filled in nicely, and I'm sure you've matched the Palo Verde species. So I guess as this perspective actually will look a little greener in 4 years.
You're right. It's always a tough, and you know this as well as anyone, it's always a tough decision. Do you show the trees as much as you possibly can, and then they hide the building, or do you not? But you're absolutely right. Our trees aren't big by accident. They're big on purpose. We put in a larger tree. We've gone in and taken out all the soil and put in a compacted soil. It's very expensive, but it works. And what most people miss, but you probably know, is that when you park in those spaces, you'll notice that there's a stop from the asphalt, and then a gutter, and then there are pavers, and then there are trees. Well, we don't just allow the tree to grow in that tree well. That paved surface is permeable, and I think that's a big part of why our trees on Farmer have grown so well.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Thank you. We'll open the public hearing process at this point. And I only have one card, so if there's anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this, please let staff know. Philip Yates.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Riverside Neighborhood Association and as their president. We've looked at some of the design of this, and we just think that it's kind of blasé, kind of bleak, really not a whole lot of definition to the project. And definitely the parking situation is going to be an issue if this were to be approved. 9 parking spaces on the street is hardly enough for 171 units and 4 6-story buildings. There's only, I think, 1,100 square feet of retail space, which is not enough retail space for people to actually utilize as retail. I would like to have seen much more retail area, which would be good for people that are just pedestrians and walking down the sidewalk and to go into restaurants and to stores. The landscaping leaves a lot to be desired. The trees could have been taller. The whole layout of how the landscaping is set up for the fronts of all of the buildings are just not so nice to look at. And there's only one access to all of these units, and that's on 7th Street. It wouldn't be enough of a accessible area for this development itself. Living in that neighborhood, I can tell you that the
You need to
parking
wrap it up.
is going to be a problem.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address this case? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Would the applicant like to respond?
Ever so briefly, sometimes you have a difference of opinion, and I think in this case we do. We have worked hard to provide a building that's beautiful. We think it is. It's got a lot of expensive features to it. It's our landscaping probably has more trees than any place else in Tempe. As it relates to the parking, I'm a bit confused. We have 192 parking spaces, not 9. We have put them in a structure inside the building, and we think it's a good thing to have only one driveway instead of several driveways. Mr. Brown and others walk up and down that street and don't stop at our building, but they certainly use the sidewalk. Our school of thought, which is a common one, is that the fewer vehicle entrances that somebody like Mr. Brown has to come across, the more pedestrian the area will be. I'd also note that we do not have parking problems in the 2 buildings we've built. In fact, not only do we not have parking problems, we have an excess of parking, and if you happen to be by our site at about the time that the various bars in town start their shifts, you'll notice there are a lot of people walking with bar T-shirts that park in our lot because there are extra spaces and walk downtown. We wouldn't do it. We wouldn't build the project if we thought it was going to be underparked, but we're sensitive to it being overparked. Are there any questions that I can respond to?
Other questions, Commissioner Brown?
I think I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask. On one of the 2 other buildings, I believe there was some housing that had some lower cost rents, subsidized in some way?
We certainly don't call them lower class.
I'm sorry, lower cost.
Cost, oh, okay.
Did I say lower class?
I thought you did. It was, we don't refer to that way, but.
Let's say lower in rent and higher in value for the occupants, perhaps. Is there anything along those lines in this
75% of what we built today, you're right, are classified as affordable units. And we built those first. This is not part of the affordable package. That's not part of the case before you either today, but no, these are not affordable units.
Any other questions? If not, then thank you.
Thank you.
We'll open it up for commissioner comments. Vice Chair Lyon.
Madam Chair, I agree with what we've heard about the quality of the urban environment that we're talking about here. I think this is a great approach, and I think it's a great project, and I will be voting to support the project.
Other comments? Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also like the design of the building. I like the way they incorporated a pathway along the railroad tracks, and I think there'll be a lot more pedestrian traffic once the Whole Foods goes in next door. So that should really activate their ground floor space there. And if there's any cars, they're going to be parked over there, and they'll just walk over here. I'm also going to support the project.
Other comments? Anyone?
Just one. Staff, was there any issues if they were to duplicate or relocate that mezzanine to the university corner?
Commissioner DiDomenico, we wouldn't have an issue with them shifting that to the south end.
Okay. Then I'm comfortable supporting the case and allowing the applicant to work through whether or not they'd like to relocate that during their construction drawing phase.
And I would just like to add that as we see the urban core plan develop, if in fact there's a way that impacts this project early on in the construction, that maybe we can start implementing some of those issues. So with that, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Brown.
One more comment, I just didn't realize it until Michael spoke. Is there any opposition to having multiple mezzanine spaces? I think that those are high-class units that have 2 levels there. Are we talking about just one mezzanine relocating it, or possibly using that to break up the 4 sort of similar blocks of parapet?
Vice Chair Lyon.
I'm suggesting I don't mind if there were more than one mezzanine.
If I may, I think what we're indicating is it's an interesting issue for them to work on a little more.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, if applicant works with staff on that, if there's a way to incorporate a little more of the nuts. But I think that's something.
I didn't want to limit it to one.
I'll entertain a motion now.
I move approval of Farmer Arts District PL 170358 with the conditions of approval so written in our packet.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner DiDomenico, seconded by Commissioner Sumners. All those in favor? Opposed? And that passes 7-0.
Thank you, and thank you to your staff as well.
The next case is Case 5, Tempe Fire Station.
Good evening. My name is Karen Stovall, Senior Planner in the Planning Division. This project is located at 8707 South McClintock Drive, which is the north of the northeast corner of McClintock and Warner. The property is zoned R17. The site is part of the existing Estrada Park, which is just over 8 acres in size. The project will occupy land within the southwest corner of the park and is surrounded by a commercial center to the south and by a bank and church to the west across McClintock. The applicant requests approval of a use permit to allow a public use, which would be the fire station in the R17 zoning district, and approval of a development plan review for a new single-story building with a surface parking lot. A two-way driveway is shown on McClintock that leads to a surface parking lot on the north and then circulates east to a gated parking lot. That drive will also serve as fire truck circulation into the building's bays. A one-way driveway is on McClintock for exiting of emergency vehicles. A new traffic signal is proposed at this driveway to stop traffic and allow emergency vehicles to quickly exit the site. The landscape plan shows mulga acacia trees between the curb and detached sidewalk on McClintock. On the east side of the sidewalk, the plan shows Chinese pistache, palo verde, and ironwood. Trees are not proposed within the parking lot landscape islands in order to allow larger shade canopies for solar panels and avoid conflict between the trees and the wide fire trucks that will be passing by. The proposed building is 1 story and just over 30 feet high. The design incorporates pitch standing seam metal roof, stucco, and concrete masonry units that have a brick appearance. A neighborhood meeting was not required for either of these applications. The city and project architect held 2 community meetings in May of 2016 and October of this year. Community Development Department staff did not attend those meetings, but the applicant is here to respond to any questions you may have about those. Planning received 2 emails with voiced concerns about the proposed use of a portion of the existing park as a fire station instead of allowing it to remain open space. Staff is recommending approval of the use permit and development plan review subject to the stipulations in the staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of staff at this time? Seeing none, if the applicant would like to address the commission.
Good evening. My name is Matt Gorman, Principal Architect with Arrington Watkins Architects, and also a South Tempe resident. What we brought tonight was just the slides that we presented to the public in our meeting with them, our most recent one. Things that I'd like to point out here is that when you look at the site plan, we have a 10,000 square foot building with 12 occupants. There's 3 truck bays, 2 of which will be initially used. 1 is really for future growth. We made a significant effort to try and condense the site and make it as tight and low impact as possible. We went so far as to even talking to the neighbor to the south to try to move our driveway and utilize their driveway as well as a way of ingress so that we didn't have to do that on the north side of the building. But that didn't play out. They weren't interested in that back alley becoming a return driveway for the fire trucks. We've provided a desert landscape within the site, and then as you can see, there's some screening landscape around the project site. Some of the features that we're incorporating that were requested by the city are the solar parking canopies, and we'll have some solar panels on the roof. We want to achieve at least 50% solar power for this project as a means of being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. We are going to have a rainwater harvesting system as a demonstration, along with a demonstration garden that works from that. And then the last thing on there, as you see, is the screen wall. The back portion, which is really the parking area for the firemen, is screened by pretty much a standard fence. Let's see. I'll point out that on the south side, which is the shopping center, we've put all of the utilities and equipment and everything on that side so that it's not, a nuisance. Does any noise that's generated or anything is not on the park side or doesn't have an impact on residential properties. The nearest residence is 350 feet away from this project, so we have a fairly significant buffer distance around it. When we look at the elevations of the project and the finishes, we took a look at trying to fit this into the neighborhood and really the South Tempe area and what's there. And so we pulled material palette from, there's Wells Fargo across the street and a church and a city well site. We're incorporating a jumbo brick, which is found on the south east corner of Warner and McClintock, and as well as McClintock and Elliott and the Safeway complex there. So the color palette really pulls that together. We've got shaded entries and shaded areas for the firemen on the outside of the building. We tried to make it approachable. There's not really any public use within this project. There's a front door and a lobby, but there are no public spaces within the building. So it has a very low activity footprint, really just the maximum of 12 firemen that are going to be there, and the occasional 1 or 2 person visitors that might show up. This is the side that faces north towards the park, and as we move around, of course, from the street side, it becomes more and more of the private areas for the firemen. This is a view from the park looking at the back of the building, and as you can see, the fence on the one side there, it's difficult to render. There's a significant grade change. If any of you have been to Estrada Park, it's a big basin, right? It's a giant retention basin. So there's a significant grade change there. As part of our public outreach meeting, the feedback we did get, we had some very good feedback that said, good job. This really fits, within the Southern Tempe look and feel. We had some residents voice concern that this wall seemed a little high, so we're going to modify that to match the wall that's on McClintock, which is 4 feet of masonry with 2 feet of wrought iron on top, trying to help bring the visual appearance of that fence down a little bit. And then there was some comments on the colors, and this is always an issue with renderings, right? Like the light color on the renderings is pretty bright, and it provides a lot of contrast, and that we should maybe tone that down. So we're looking at that, and certainly we'll do mock-ups in construction to make sure that we're not creating something that's harsh to look at. But as you know, renderings don't always work out, especially in a projected environment. So that's it for that. Any questions, Jeff?
Questions? Commissioner Summers.
Just a question about your perimeter wall on the south side that is adjacent to the park. Everything I saw in the drawing package looked like a 4-foot wall, and that sounded low. And then your renderings look like it's higher than that. What's the intent there?
So the park drops actually 54 inches. Right? It's a basin, and so we're up at the building is actually sitting up at street level, and then the back of the building we're filling in that retention basin portion within the wall. So if I go all the way back to the parking, when you look at where the staff parking is, where that row of trees is there is a grade separation there. That's their parking on fill. Although it's sloping towards the park, it's raised up somewhat.
So sorry, is that a 4-foot wall or an 8-foot wall or something in between?
It's going to be closer to 8 feet.
Commissioner Didomenko.
2 questions. Roughly, what's the estimate of how long it takes to build this, specifically with its impact on the park? How long will the park be shut down, and will it be the whole park, part of the park?
Yeah, so the city made a choice. There's a second project, which is the renovation of the park. And at our suggestion, the city decided to move that, that park renovation project would have occurred, I think, in 2018, 2019. And they decided to move that funding up and incorporate the remodel of the park and redo the playground and everything all at the same time. The building, the fire station typically would take 10 months. So we're looking at somewhere between 10 months to a year and doing all of the construction at the same time so that gets completely done. Because in my opinion, it would be a mistake to, block off parts of the park to build this and then come back in the end of 2019 and then do a park renovation and lock up the park again for another year's of construction, right? So that's all being condensed now into a single, it should be between 10 and 12 months of construction.
And that includes the re-engineering of the retention capacity.
Right.
So all the grading. Okay. My second question, you probably have to bring the tenant in to answer this one. How many service calls are anticipated to come out of this station once it's fully operational? In other words, how many times in the course of a week or a month will engines or vehicles leave with alarms actuated, with sirens actuated?
Greg Reese, Chief, Fire Medical Rescue. Thank you for having me up here, Commissioners. We're looking at about 1,400 calls a year. The area generates the majority of its calls currently are during the daytime hours. We have evaluated, obviously, a 5-year pattern in the past, but we can't. I'm not going to stand here and guarantee that the truck is going to run 1,400 calls because we are going up about 5% in call volume a year in the city. But we anticipate when we open, it'll run about 1,400 calls. In comparison, we have our truck, our other stations, they're 2,000, 3,000 calls a year for each unit.
And you said during the daytime, so what do we consider daytime? What are the hours?
We evaluated after 10 o'clock at night, and after 10 o'clock at night, do you recall the exact number? One call every 3 days after 10 o'clock.
Between 10 and 5 in the morning?
In the morning, 6 o'clock the next morning.
Okay.
And then to answer your question, we consider code 2. Code 3 would be the lights and sirens, which would be considered by some a nuisance. The call is going to determine the times that we will turn on the lights and sirens. I think going the direction we're going toward a commercial building is much better than coming out at some of our stations where you are coming right at a neighborhood. In the time that Station 4 has been on Elliott and has went right at the Coventry, right into the neighborhood there, we have always tried to be good neighbors and be mindful of activating our alarm or siren. Obviously, we engage the lights. Also, the lights play a big role in giving us the ability to get out on and face the oncoming traffic or going with traffic. So we've never had a complaint.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Am I reading this right? So the site itself, the park, Estrada Park, is 8 acres, and the fire station will take up 3% of that total?
The fire station will occupy about 1.25 acres.
1.25 acres out of the 8 acres.
So a little more than 1/8 of the park.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? And I was going to make the same follow-up. It looks like about less than 1/6 of the park will be used for the station, and then the impact on the retention, there will be impact, so that will be handled during the park remodel. Is that correct?
Right, that's being handled as part of the engineering work that's associated with this and the park renovation.
All right, any other questions at this point? Thank you. We'll go ahead and open up the public meeting, and then you'll have a chance to respond. I have 2 requests to speak. First is Tom Flynn. And again, please just be mindful of the lights, and when the yellow light comes on,
Okay.
start wrapping it up.
Sure. My name is Tom Flynn. I live at 1975 East Morgan Drive in Tempe, somewhat east of this park. First of all, the history of the park is that it was dedicated to the city as a park and drainage retention. That drainage retention is overflowed. I see nothing about the engineering to satisfy the drainage. According to city regulations, you can't deepen the park, and you have to have certain side slopes to that park. I think that you should not address this use permit until those things have been satisfied. The second point is the general plan has this as open space. Does not have it as any civic use. Civic uses are specifically designated as fire stations and police stations, among others. There is no designation. There is a procedure for amending the general plan, and it has not been followed. I urge you to deny the permit at this time until those things are satisfied.
Thank you. Amy McNamara, are you here, or do you want me to read your statement? Okay. I'm having problems reading it.
I'm going to take a crack at this. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Please rush emergency service use permits for the benefit of the surrounding cities and, sorry, that's where I lose it. That's about all.
And there's also a note right up above.
Fire engine house needs to be built ASAP. Does that capture it well enough? Okay, thank you.
Those are the only two cards I have. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to address the issue?
I would like to.
And if you'd state your name and address and then fill a card out for staff so we have it for the record.
Certainly. My name is Brian Hendrickson. I live at 1831 East Colt Road. I am the residence that is the closest to the proposed fire station. I stand in opposition to allowing this permit use. I echo the sentiments of the gentleman that spoke before me, that it is my understanding that this property was deeded by the original developer for purposes of use of a park, and that although I am not prepared to discuss all of the details of that, I question whether or not the proper legalities have been followed to overcome that deed restriction. Secondly, I submit that there are other more appropriate properties in the area to build a station. And I wonder if the city has considered the properties along Elliott Road between McClintock and the 101, McClintock and Price, along those eateries. There's a lot of vacant space there that would be equally close to the other areas that the station proposes to serve. That seems to me could be used without taking this sole green oasis in southeast Tempe for a fire station. This park is beautifully wooded, and in particular the density of the mature trees are exactly where they're going to put this fire station. The fire station agenda, or the resume or the memorandum submitted by the architect, suggests that there will be no deterioration to value to the properties by building the station. That is totally unfounded based on the allegations or the contents of the memorandum itself, because there will be noise, there will be additional traffic congestion with a new fire light, with a traffic light. There will be the 12 and probably longer period of time.
You need to wrap up.
Okay. The long and the short of it is that this is property that will deteriorate the values of the other properties in the area, particularly the homes.
Thank you.
One of the things that they can do possibly, if the die is cast that's just going to go in, they talk about that they have 24 spaces.
You need to stop. Thank you.
24 spaces for parking. The 12 that are north of the property could be cut off. They say there are only going to be 12 people there at a time, and that would decrease the amount of land they would take up.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. If the applicant would like to address anything that was said.
Yeah, just on one thing, on the dedication of the land as a park, that, and whether it could be used as a fire station, that was vetted through the city attorney. It was the city attorney's opinion that the city could build a fire station. Let's bring that up.
Any questions, comments from the commission? Seeing none, then we'll close the hearing and open it up to commissioner comments. Commissioner DiDomenico.
I'm going to just address the use permit because I have no problem with the design. I I don't take issue with that portion of what's before us today. But our use permit requirements are very specific, and you've got to meet all the tests. And I'm really having trouble getting past the noise nuisance portion of this. And we talk about, you know, the impact on the residents, and there are certainly houses on both sides of McClintock in this area that may be affected. And we heard from the applicant that there'll be roughly 14, they estimate 1,400 calls per year, which is low compared to some of the other locations, and that most of those calls would be during the daytime. There's also a lot of commercial operation in that area. There's an adjacent shopping center that also will be impacted. So it's not just the residents. You've got a law office that sits even closer than any of the homes. You've got a therapeutic massage operation that's right there. You've got a church that's across the street. So I just need to have staff tell me how we look at our test for nuisance in our use permit criteria and determine that this noise is not significant. And I know that staff has gone through this and thought through this, so I want you to help me get through that.
In evaluating the use permit, we do look at whether or not the use is going to cause a nuisance based on noise. In the staff report, we have looked at the number of trips, the way that vehicles will be exiting the site, mitigation based on the amount of time it would take a fire truck to exit the site, considering that there will be a new traffic signal installed on McClintock Drive, with the number of trips that would occur every day, which my coworker has looked at, and it would be about 3 per day. We don't believe that would be a reason to not support this request.
The 3 trips per day seems so counterintuitive to me that we're relocating a fire station or there's a significant demand to put one in this area, and yet there's going to be 3 calls a day. So I take that number. I'm sure that didn't come out of the blue. I mean, I'm sure it really means something, but then it begs the question, why is it so? And I live in that area, you know, in general. So, you know, it just seems like there should be more calls coming out of here, but.
May I add?
Go ahead.
I'll add to what the chief said. So what you have to consider is what the fire department is concerned with is the time of those calls, right? And you have to consider that this is McClintock, which is an arterial. The calls for service that they are answering are in this area, which means that the truck will go up and down McClintock in this area with the sirens on. That's what we're talking about, right? So leaving the building and then turning and going up or down McClintock with the sirens on to answer one of those 3 calls in an expedient fashion is not much different than coming from, you know, the station next to my house up there at Baseline and driving down McClintock and answering the calls down here. You still got the same lights and sirens, the same traffic. It isn't really changing anything, right? As far as
I follow your logic that makes sense, and it's the same time of day whether the point of egress when the siren first is activated, or it just happens that they're driving one north or south on McClintock.
Right. It just means the truck doesn't have as far to go to get to these calls.
I have a question for the chief. There's a similar situation with this station that's on McClintock and basically South Shore, right next, just south of the Chapman Chevrolet, or Baseline, I'm sorry, Baseline.
Yes, ma'am.
What is the distance from the Lakes residential? Is it farther away, closer? Because it seems like it's actually closer at that location than it is going to be here. Is that?
that's my neighborhood. The houses are literally 60 feet away from that fire station on the backside. And on McClintock, the houses abut McClintock on the east side. And that's, so you're looking at, 60 feet away. The nearest residence to this is 350 feet, unless you're driving up McClintock. And then, as the neighbors point out, they live on McClintock Drive. And so they're subject to the sound of McClintock Drive, whatever it is.
And do you have any extraordinary complaints about the station there from either commercial, or have there any problems?
No, I think, Madam, I think the greatest example again is our Station 4 on Elliott, and to your question, sir, the call volume continues to go up for our Station 4 at Elliott and roughly Mill. That unit becomes less reliable to the southern portion of the city, and as it becomes less reliable, your response times continue to increase. And we are in an automatic aid system where we are 23 cities that cover each other. Currently, we're being covered in that area by Station 4 in Tempe, then it goes to Chandler, then it goes back to Tempe, then it goes to Chandler. As our neighbors continue to increase in their call volume, that area becomes even less, or those stations become less reliable to that area of the city. The other concern I have as the fire chief is what the data is telling me. 85284, where I live and have for 20 years, is we are aging in place, our population. And 4 to 6 minutes is extremely important when I dial 911. And I don't just mean me, I mean as a representative of anybody who lives in our city. And as we become less reliable, our response times go up. In that specific area, we looked at what the response times go up. They go up roughly 1 minute by each unit that comes into cover for the other, currently. 1 minute in increased response time. The area has been in need of a station for a very, very long time, and I truly believe it's time to put it there. To answer your question, I'm sorry, I went off, but Station 4, again, we've been there for a very long time. We've been a good neighbor. We actually have neighbors that are sharing a wall with us there. We have the golf course to the immediate north, to the immediate east. We have neighbors. We're going directly out south. We are coming straight out at the neighborhood. We try to be respectful and still safe, and we've never had a complaint.
Yeah. Vice Chair Lyon.
If I could offer a thought quickly, my own personal take is that what this really means here, this criteria we're trying to meet, is avoidable nuisance, not just simply nuisance, because you could be annoyed by anything. But in my opinion, this is a sound that must be part of the city. It's unavoidable. It must happen someplace. So you have to ask, where does it belong? But to me, it is not an avoidable sound. Furthermore, personally, I don't think it's a nuisance because it is, in my opinion, vastly overpowered by the value that this provides both to property and to lives. And so that sound that is made by the fire engines, I say that's a blessing, not a nuisance.
Thank you. You guys can sit down. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Amorosi, and then Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a strong proponent for parks, city parks, and I'm hoping that this doesn't become a trend with the city to take away public space. But I also recognize, being a longtime citizen of South Tempe, has needed a fire station for probably decades. And the public response time, the public safety issue here is kind of outweighs what the public park space, because I know I live across the street from the Apache Boulevard fire station, and our neighborhood is really happy that station is there, because we know we're getting older too, and if that truck can get there faster to the house, more power to them. Thank you.
without trying to repeat everything that has just been said, I think having a fire station in close proximity to your home reduces the response times, is a net positive to any other impacts that it might have in the area. Along a major arterial street, I think you're going to have these types of things going on regardless. Something additional that I'd like to say is that I appreciate the incorporation of the solar parking canopies that we've got in front of us, the rainwater harvesting, the demonstration garden. I think incorporating those things into this project is also makes it that much more beneficial. Thank you.
Other comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Vice Chair.
I move that we approve Tempe Fire Station Number 7, case PL 170296.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Vice Chair Lyons, seconded by Commissioner Amorosi for the, and let me just ask, you're saying both the use permit or just the development plan?
I would say both. We can split it out if we need to.
So it's for both the use permit and the DPR. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, that passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay, the next case we're going to hear is number 7 on your agenda, the Muse.
Good evening, Commission. I'm Diana Kaminsky, Senior Planner with the City of Tempe Planning Division. The Muse project consists of several different entitlement requests. I'll read those off for the benefit of the audience. A use permit request to allow residential in the CSS zoning district, the north portion of the lot. Let me see if I can move this forward. Whoops. There we go. The lot actually has 2 different zoning classifications. The red on the north end is the CSS commercial district, which is landlocked. It is not connected to Apache Boulevard. And the southern portion of the site is zoned R4. They're proposing to do the development within the standards of those 2 zoning classifications. So the request is for use permits based on the site conditions as well as a development plan review. They're not requesting a PAD to accommodate their development. The second request is for 2 use permit standards to reduce the east and west side yard setbacks by 20% to go from 10 feet to 8 feet. And that's because the lot is about 100 feet wide, so it's a very narrow site. In order to accommodate building code and landscaping on the sides, they're asking for reductions of those side yard setbacks. A use permit standard to reduce the front yard setback by 20% from 20 to 18 to allow some architectural projections for the front patios along Spence Avenue. A use permit standard to increase the building height by 5% from 35 to 37 feet in the R4 zoning, which is actually making it work within the CSS zoning as well, because those 2 zoning districts have different standards, to allow stairwells to a patio roof deck amenity. And lastly, the development plan review, including site plan, building elevations, and landscape plan. As I mentioned, the site is a very narrow site. It's oriented north to south here with the parking for guests and the amenity space at the north end adjacent to the hotel on Apache, and the units push towards the street front on the Spence Avenue side. This is a sample of the 2 floor plan types, so they have some alternation between the different units. The end units facing Spence, they've rotated the doors so that the doors face the street. They've created a patio space along Spence. The remainder of the units face the interior drive. These are the rendered elevations showing some differences in the garage door styles to allow some variation within the elevations. The projected elements that you see above the roof line are the tower elements for the stairs with doors and windows that come out to a rooftop deck. The landscapes plan was split to allow more visibility. Along the street front, there's 2 layers of trees to provide shade along the street front itself. And then they've provided a variety of plants for a choice of pallets within the backyards on the east and west side within the private yards. The pool amenity areas at the north end, the mailboxes are also at the north end, And the guest parking and bike parking for guests is also located in that amenity area. This is a rendered version of the landscape plan. There is a note in the landscape palette, there was a change in the plant. The tree along Spence is shown as a Texas ebony, and that's not a tree that we would allow along a street front pedestrian area because of the rate of growth and thorns. It was a change that I didn't catch in their revisions that they made. What they're proposing is the Sonoran Desert Museum Palo Verde, which ties into the adjacent site's new development, which provides shade and some color variation. And then behind that are some heritage oak for additional shade to the buildings. And this is a rendering showing the street front view. I did want to note they're showing only the palm trees as a reference to the landscape, but they did not show the other street trees because you wouldn't see much of the first 2 floors as those trees matured. So they just wanted to show the building elevations along the street front here. And then the bottom picture is the north end rendering. And staff has not heard any comments or concern from the public. We're recommending approval of all of the use permits and the development plan review, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Commissioner Brown.
Ms. Kaminsky, I see it looks like the driveway is 20 feet wide.
Yes.
That's a little tighter than usual. Usually we see 24 feet as the minimum, and this is 20 feet. Are we concerned about people backing into each other or the unit across the driveway?
So the minimum is 20 for the fire lane and the drive lane. To the sides of that are, on this landscape plan, you can see a little bit where they've actually changed the materials. So there's hardscape on both sides that serve as sidewalk areas and thresholds to each of the unit garages. So you actually have like a 26-foot wide total width of the driveway, including those 2 strips of decorative pavers.
I guess those little circles are the recycling bins?
Yes.
Do they stay out all the time? Is there space in the garage? Oh, I see
They
them
are
in the garage. I'm
required
sorry.
to be put in the garage.
I see them in the garage. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Dina. Other questions? I have just one question on the private patio backyard. Those are not part of common area, so they would be the individual homeowners'
I will
requirement.
have to defer to the applicant on how they're managing the landscape. I know they do have common areas. Those landscape areas in the backyards do have unlockable gates, so they have egress through them, so they kind of serve as a communal space, even though they're privatized. But I'll defer to them on how they're maintaining that.
Anything else for staff at this time? If not, then if the applicant would like to make a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Wendy Riddell with the law firm Barry Riddell, 6750 East Camelback. My pleasure to be here on behalf of Joe Reese. Recognizing you have a bit of a full house, I certainly have a full presentation I'd be delighted to give. Alternatively, if you have specific questions, I can answer those as well, Madam Chair. It's up to you.
If you want to just do a quick presentation, that'd be great.
So if I could, I know Diana touched already a little bit, putting this particular site into context. We're over east of Rural on Spence Avenue, kind of a mid-block location. Surrounding context, I know this commission's already familiar. You've got apartments, hotel to the north, apartments, and a little bit of older single-family to the south. It is, as Diana also touched upon, it is a very constrained site. It's long and narrow. It's a little bit like a bowling alley, and that has indeed created some design constraints that we're addressing through the CUP process. I think we're finding here also a very good balance of creating density, but yet single-family fee-owned housing that still provides a connection to that significant investment that this community has made in its infrastructure, both through light rail, through Orbit, through Valley Metro. This is a good way to provide a project that will benefit from those amenities. And of course, the general plan designation here actually promotes high density as well, up to 65 dwelling units per acre. I will tell you we have come a long way on this project, so to speak. So when we originally started, it was actually back in February of 16 with this project, we were actually first proposing something that was significantly more dense, coming in at 45 units, 64 dwelling units per the acre, 54 feet in height. And we worked with staff throughout that plan, get an idea here. But we really found that it had limited space for fire access, difficulty with refuse. We're sort of fighting every development standard along the way and running into issues with each of the code requirements that were becoming pretty cumbersome for us to deal with. So as a result, we took a step back. My client took a step back, listened to the comments from staff, and ultimately came forward now with 16 units, that is single-family attached, where we are not proposing to change the zoning, but again, to use that conditional use permit provision to allow the residential within the commercial and some minor deviations in the development standard. We think that this is a great balance between what the general plan requires and really what can work with this particular site. So again, the request before you today is for design review approval. It is to allow residential development within commercial zoning. It's a request for a minor reduction in the side yard building setback, again, recognizing the site is so very narrow. It's a request for an increase in height just in the residential component from 35 to 37 feet. Again, it's trying to balance across that commercial and residential zoning district, and it's really just for a small projection. And then finally, the request for the front yard from 20 to 16. And to be very clear, that's not across the entire front yard. That's really just to allow some undulation and some projection, so some more interesting architecture is the purpose of that request. Again, showing you the idea that we would have residential in the commercial. The reduction in the side yard setback from 10 to 8 feet because of that narrow shape. The increased height. The request to reduce the front yard for that additional articulation in the architecture. It's dangerous when you ask a lawyer to be speedy, so I'm trying here. This is to give you an idea. This is the view from Spence. As Diana shared with you, we sort of stripped some of the landscaping away here to give you the ability to see the architecture. This will indeed have additional landscaping that you don't see on this rendering. And this is the view when you look from the back of the site forward from that common amenity to give you an idea of what that will look like as well. Conceptual landscape plan, you'll notice that we're also providing more guest parking spaces than we're required to as well. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Johnson.
I was just wondering if you could address the backyard question that was brought up earlier.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson. Those will actually be private. So the rear yard, again, this is single family fee-owned product. So those rear yards will be private.
Can I ask a question about I'm assuming you'll have CC&Rs. Will there be a prohibition against using them as rental properties for any period of time?
You know, Madam Chair, right now I don't think we have planned any type of prohibition. We do view the type of product that we're putting in here really as more suited for a professor than a student, so to speak. That's really fee ownership directed and targeted for that community, but we've not discussed specific CC&Rs.
Commissioner Brown.
You just stated that the backyards are private, but they do have gates, and there's looks like a 4-foot or maybe 3-foot sidewalk. So out of 8 feet, you've lost about half to pavement. Is there any reason we couldn't just say delete the gates and delete that sidewalk so we have a little more planting? It's a little wider than this.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Brown, I think your fire department might be mad at you. So those gates were actually, well, you can do whatever you want. We're fine with that.
Gates are, I'm sorry.
The gates were requested by the fire department so that if they wanted the ability to have access, they would have the ability to unlock those gates and go between. Please.
Unlock the gates.
I'm sorry, the sidewalks are required by building code for egress from the upper floor units where they have bedrooms, so that is a secondary egress required by building code. The gates were required to not be locked so that you could have that safe egress as well as having the fire be able to get in to do rescue from the back.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Lyons.
Hi. I wonder if you would be kind enough to tell us about what drove the party diagram, the center drive with units on either side.
I think, Madam Chair, Commissioner Lyon, really the complication of the narrowness of the lot with 100 feet. Again, I think you saw our very first plan. We looked for the ability to go up, but it was challenging both to park that as well as refuse, and for refuse to be able to circulate through the site. I will tell you, frankly, I've had more meetings with your refuse department than I care to discuss, working through that complicated issue with this site. We looked even at being able to obtain an easement from the property owner to our north, so we could have both fire and refuse circulation through that. Unfortunately, it just wasn't feasible. So that's ultimately what drove this design.
Okay. If I may, I'll tell you, I feel a little challenged by this site plan. As I look on the aerial photo and I see your neighbor to the west has a property of similar width, but they have a different solution where they have parking on the west, buildings on the east. And your neighbor on the east, although it looks like their property is a little wider, they have a single drive to the back of the property. The parking's in the back, and then the building is more at the front. And those might not be the most gracious solutions, but it looks to me like one of those approaches might have been applicable here. And where it starts to rub for me a little bit is well, don't think me a terrible person, but I feel like these units are a little bit sardine canned on either side of that drive. And I share the concern about the width of the drive. I appreciate that maybe in reality you have more like 26 feet to get out of your garage, but they're economical garages that don't have any extra width to them. You know, so you're parked in tight next to the other vehicle, and then you've got to back out and make a tight turn, and if there's other traffic. I just feel like there are a few significant concerns there that a different site approach might have solved. Would you respond to those remarks?
Of course, Madam Chair, again, Commissioner Lyon. It's been a little while since I looked at it, but my recollection is when we were contemplating the site design, we are actually the narrowest in width along that street. And really an additional 10 feet on this particular site would have been meaningful and would have given us additional design opportunities that we didn't have. I mean, I assure you, from going from the type of units we were talking about and the type of density at 45 down to 16, that's a big gulp for my client. If he could have found a way to put additional density and made the site plan work, frankly, we would have. We really looked at a way here to make use of the two existing zoning districts, to blend it across, and again, to come up with a design that was beneficial and benefits the infrastructure that the city has put in with light rail, with the density, with the request here, but then also the site constraints. So I hear you. I appreciate what you're saying. And it wasn't an easy decision. It was, again, since February of 2016 that we've been working through site plan alternatives for this site.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments? If not, then we will open up the public hearing portion. The first person I have is Michelle Serena. Yeah. Michelle and Jim Serena.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak, because we own the property to the right of this particular project. We own Tempe Palms Apartments, which is at 1026 East Spence Avenue. And we're very concerned about this project. We know that they've been looking to develop the property, and we don't oppose that. It's just the way it's being developed is what's concerning us. It's a long and skinny project, and they did ask to go over our property to let the trash truck come by, and we said no, because we'd have to live with that easement forever. And then, but we have 15 apartments that line his property, and they're bedroom-sized apartments. And it would, having a setback and all that there, changing the setback would apprehend our peace and quiet and enjoyment. It's already going to, tower over our building already and put shade where there's light going into our building now. But yet, we're going to even put them closer to my bedroom windows. We have a problem with that. Jim?
I'm sorry. Sure.
How many stories is your apartment?
3 stories, sir.
Pardon?
3 stories.
3, okay.
Right. Your time is almost up. So do you have something to add?
Yeah, no, I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Michael Marcelino? Sorry.
I want to reiterate what the owner said, but I'm the manager there, and I also live on that side of the building. It would be our west side, the proposed building's east side, and we have. I'm concerned with the variance on that, with that building line on that side of the 20%, reducing it to 8 feet. Will be right up against us, really detracting from the view. We also have a number of PhD candidates that love our place because it's so quiet from ASU, and I'm concerned with maybe the increased noise with the building being so close together. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to discuss this? Go ahead, and then please fill out a form for staff.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mary Abeda. I reside at 1418 South Kenneth Place in Tempe, which is east of this location. This is my first time seeing it because evidently I live too far away to receive the mailer about this. I appreciate that this is only going to be 16 units as opposed to 45 because we have a serious parking problem in our neighborhood with ASU residents and employees of that facility, ASU facility right there near Spence and Rule, that park in our neighborhood because they don't want to, I guess, pay for parking or what have you. My concern is, will this be actually owner-occupied, single-family things? Because the development that was built right across the street from me at Kenneth Place, whatever they call them, it's 2 parking garage. And the first year, it all worked out cool. The second year, I think they have more than 2 vehicles. And so you have at least 8 extra vehicles, 5 to 8 on any given day, parking on Kenneth Place of residents of that. And so that would be my concern, is where the extra parking is going to go, because currently it's no parking in front on Spence on both sides of that street. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak? If not, we'll close the public hearing, and if you'd like to address.
Thank you. Yes, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I will tell you this is the first that we've heard of any concerns. But I will also share with you, or at least point out, if I could to you, that again, this is already, multifamily is already permitted here. What we're actually proposing, I think, is a better situation for the adjacent neighbors with single family, with substantially less units than would otherwise be permitted by right here. Regarding the issue they raised of shade, I will tell you that we actually did a shade study at the request of staff, and that was determined not to be a detrimental impact when evaluated on the adjacent properties. Regarding parking, each and every unit provides 2 parking spaces. We actually go above and beyond the ordinance requirements again with 5 additional guest parking spaces. So just bringing this back full picture, this is a request for DRC approval. This is a request for very minor deviations in the code. Frankly, the property line we're talking about is really, we're asking for a deviation of 2 feet. And I think when you look at the aerial photograph, you'll notice that their structure, the adjacent neighbors, respectfully, is also built very close to that property line as well. So we're simply asking for something that is similar to an adjacent condition. Happy to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Commissioner Brown.
Johnson.
Johnson, I'm sorry.
I have the benefit of the name tag, so it's a
Thank
little
you.
easier.
I'm curious, you mentioned the 5 guest parking spaces. Say that one of the residents does have 3 cars, what if they use one of those parking spaces? Will there be something written in the CCNRs that say residents are not to use those parking spaces, or how will that be managed?
Yep. Want to answer that? Yeah. Please. If I could, my client, Joe Reese, I'm going to let him address that if that's okay.
Good evening. I'm Joseph Reese. I have a long history here in Tempe. I was a founder of Bandersnatch Brew Pub, which many of you remember, and we were your neighbors next door at City Hall for many, many years, serving the community. My mom worked there, and I feel very vested in everything I do in Tempe. Currently, I'm building a 38-home project that we're just completing right now called the Newport in Tempe on Weber in North Tempe. And it's got back-to-back driveways with similar drive sizes as what we're now proposing. I currently live there, and it works out fine. We've been highly successful with that project. It's probably the highest quality residential project of its price in the city of Tempe. And when we built it, the only single-family home project in the city of Tempe, new on the books at the time. Regarding this project, and I think Diana Kaminsky would affirm that we've worked together on a number of projects, and I pay attention to staff. We have our disagreements, and we work together, but I always listen. We scrapped an entire completed project for 45 units. That would have been a phenomenal project for the site. 16 units is highly underutilizing this site in this location. This is a very dense location. The project just to the west of us is 4-story, and you have the district to the north of us, which is up 6 stories, plus the hotel there. So it's a dense area, and the housing is needed. What we're doing is a little bit out of character in that we're doing a higher price tag home than what would typically be found in this location, just as I did at the Newport. When I built the Newports, homes were selling $140,000 on Spence and the surrounding streets. Those same homes right now start at $280,000 for the old homes, and we've sold out our homes in the 400s up to $450,000. These homes right here will sell over $500,000. They're larger than the Newport in size because they go up to about 1,950 square feet. But we've worked very closely with the staff and listened to everything the staff said. We didn't create this site. We didn't create the difficulties with the site. It's a 100-foot wide site. We met every single parameter for the 45 units, and we could have parked it. We could have collected trash, but the trash would have been collected in the front. The trash department wouldn't allow us trash trucks to back out onto Spence. That's why they insisted on it being put in the back. Fire trucks wanted to have a wider lane. So those were the 2 impediments that we ran into on that project. Otherwise, everything else fit just fine within all the proper setback area. So we reduced a 45-unit project down to 16, tried to work with our neighbors to gain some access to do some trash in the back and an access, but they didn't want to allow there to be an easement through their property because they felt like it could impact them on a sale in the future. We gained an easement from the hotel for fire, but then the fire department wanted us to have them abandon 2 parking places for their hotel so that not only was it just striped, but it could never be used for parking, and of course the hotel was unwilling to do that.
We might be wandering just a bit, so we'll let you. Have we answered your question?
No, my question was...
the parking 2 cars.
Correct, the guest parking.
Yeah. So the 2 cars, every homeowner are allowed to have up to 2 cars per household written into the CCNRs. they may not use guest parking places for overnight parking. If they're coming and dropping off groceries, they could be there for an hour, but that's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
I knew we would get there.
Any other questions for me?
Anything else from Commission? Okay, thank you. Pardon me?
He wants to reply.
I'm sorry, that's not part of the public process. The public hearing has closed, so they were just responding to public comments, so, okay. Thank you. Comments from commissioners? Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is definitely a difficult site. It's been sitting empty for 20 years, and I'd much rather see 16 units than 45 units because there are a couple other empty lots that are also going, when they're developed, and they will be developed, that are going to empty out on Spence, and I don't know how much Spence can handle. So I really have to compliment Diana Kaminsky on this for working with the developer. I really appreciate the work that you did and even the landscaping out front. And I'm going to support this project because I like a for sale project instead of another apartment complex. Thank you.
Other comments? Anyone? Commissioner Summers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share Commissioner Lyons' concerns about the site. I don't have any problem with residential in this area. I'm typically an advocate for density, but in this case, a lot of the things that we're being asked to do in terms of reduced setbacks and increased height are essentially self-imposed, in my mind, from the way the site's designed and the difficult condition that exists on the site, no question. So I'm having a hard time supporting this one.
Vice Chair Lyon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will double down. I can't support this project. I do not believe in the site plan. I don't think it's a proper solution. I don't think traffic can move through this. I don't think it's a good livable space because it's so tight. We have examples to either side showing alternate site plans. The site to the west is a little wider, but that partie diagram would still work with a different shaped building. Just drive on one side, building on the other would work. I don't have a problem with granting, with changing setbacks, but I just cannot support the site plan. And I'll go further. I'm sorry, but I just do not think it's an attractive project either.
Other comments? Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I don't necessarily have an issue with the site layout, and I don't know that it's, I think having this development compared to what was originally shown is an improvement from what was initially pursued, and I'll be supporting the project.
Other comments? I'm not thrilled with it. I think it's a tight spot. I'm concerned with the width of the driveway. I'm not crazy about setbacks, having been the beneficiary of a setback reduction with a 6-story building going next to a 3-story building. It does impact your quality of life. I don't like the design. I don't like what you see as your front entrance is a garage door. It just, to me, it doesn't work, and particularly at the price point you're talking about, I think it really doesn't work. So I appreciate that it's a difficult property, but I'd like to see a little more creativity go into the design and break it up somehow. I don't know if that's possible, but with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the Muse PL 170320.
Second? Second. It's been moved by Commissioner Amorosi, seconded by Commissioner Johnson for the approval All those in favor, please raise your hand. And those opposed? That motion fails 4-3, so we need a motion in the positive now. Is that correct? Okay, Commissioner Brown.
Regrettably, I move that we do not approve Muse PL 170320.
Is there a second?
Right?
If the applicant would request a continuation, is that what I'm hearing?
Just a moment.
There would have to be.
Madam Chair, my client at the moment would elect not to continue this case and to go ahead and have a vote.
I'm sorry, so you're not requesting a continuance?
Madam
Okay.
Chair, we are not.
All right, so Commissioner Brown has
Seconded.
moved that the case be denied, seconded by Commissioner Summers. All those in favor?
Well, I made that motion perhaps in haste. If we deny that, is there a time limit on when they could come back with some other design, or are they asking for a continuance because it
not.
gives them more flexibility?
They're not asking for a continuance.
Okay, I understand.
So it's been moved by Commissioner Brown, seconded by Commissioner Summers. All those in favor of denying the request? All those opposed? And that passes 4-3 with Commissioners DiDomenico, Amorosi, and Johnson in the dissent. Thank you. All right, we're going to now we'll go to quick quack. Let me just ask the commissioners, does anyone need a break before we go into this?
I appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'd like to get started again, please. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone there have been requests that other people be given their time to speak. We do not do that at the Development Review Commission. If you would like to speak on your behalf for 2 minutes, you may, but we have different rules than the council has. The council is the political body. We are the rules and reg guys. So what we're looking at is what the code says, what the use permit standards are, and that's what we're basing our decisions on tonight. So with that, we will now hear Quick Quack Car Wash. Staff would like to present.
Yes, good evening again. This project is located at 5201 South McClintock Drive, which is at the southeast corner of Baseline and McClintock. The property is zoned PCC1 and is surrounded on the east and south by a commercial center, to the west by a car dealership, and across Baseline Road to the north and northwest are 2 other commercial centers that include a bank with a drive-through lane and a drive-through restaurant at the immediate corners. The applicant requests approval of 2 use permits. The first is to allow a car wash in the PCC1 zoning district. The second is to exceed the parking maximum of 125% of the maximum allowed. The applicant also requests a development plan review for site plan, landscape plan, and building elevations for the proposed business. The existing building at this corner, formerly a gas station and convenience store, would be demolished and replaced with an automatic car wash with self-serve vacuum stations. The site, which is approximately 3/4 of an acre, has 4 existing driveways. There are 2 on Baseline and 2 on McClintock. The plans show closure of the 2 driveways closest to the intersection and reconstruction of the remaining 2 driveways in order to comply with current city standards. Along with the development of the site, the owner is making a 10-foot right-of-way dedication on the south side of Baseline Road to permit construction of a bus pullout lane and also providing an easement for a bus shelter. Vehicles would enter the site from either driveway. After exiting the tunnel, customers may use the self-serve vacuum stations located beneath 2 canopies on the east side of the wash tunnel. The applicant proposes 19 surface parking spaces, which is 5 more than the maximum allowed by the code. 3 of the 19 are for employee use, but the remaining 16 would allow customers to vacuum the inside of vehicles after they travel through the car wash tunnel. The landscape plan shows evergreen elm trees along Baseline Road and Swan Hill Olive along McClintock to complement the trees at the perimeter of the adjacent shopping center and other properties at that same intersection. The proposed building is 1 story, and the highest part of the structure at the tunnel entrance reaches 30 feet. The design incorporates stone veneer at the base and columns, decorative CMU, stucco, and a standing seam metal roof. The vacuum canopies and vacuum and refuse enclosures are constructed of similar materials. Although a neighborhood meeting was not required for the use permit and development plan review applications that are before you tonight, the applicant held a neighborhood meeting that was required for processing of a variance application associated with this project. That meeting was held in August of this year, and 3 individuals were in attendance. Concerns that were expressed during that meeting included traffic and vehicle accidents occurring on McClintock, nighttime security, the impact on water pressure in the neighborhood, and that there was no need for another car wash in the area. Following the October hearing officer hearing for the variance request, that variance was approved by the hearing officer. The applicant held a second and voluntary neighborhood meeting in November to discuss the issues raised after that hearing. Additional concerns expressed at that meeting included landscaping at the corner of the intersection that may block the view of the drivers, reduced property values, litter, the proposed building height, and stacking distance for vehicles entering the car wash tunnel. City staff also received a large amount of correspondence regarding these requests, and that information was provided in the staff reports, and additional was provided during the study session. Staff is recommending approval of the use permits and the development plan review subject to the stipulations listed in the report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff at this time? Seeing none, the applicant can make their presentation, please.
My name is Jason Johnson. I'm the founder and CEO of Quick Quack Car Wash. I live at 1380 Lead Hill Boulevard in Roseville, California, and happy to address the commission tonight. Just want to describe a little bit. This was a business plan that I came up with in business school. Probably like many of you, I dreamed of working at a car wash named Quick Quack, and it's a lot of fun. It's a great business to be a part of. One of the things that I identified in school that I found with the car wash industry, it's very fragmented and very industrial look, typically a lot of metal, also no brand. Most people can't identify the name of their car wash. They can only describe the coordinates of where they go to wash their car. And often the employees scare the customers. And these were all things I identified in school that I thought I could improve on. As I did research, one of the things that I thought about was the issue of water and a scarce resource, and found that we could create a small recycling plant on each site that we build. So we invest about $30,000 in tanks and about $30,000 in equipment to recapture and recycle the water all day as we reuse it on each vehicle. The other thing that we find that's different about Quick Quack Car Wash that makes a difference, and people always want to ask, what's different about your business, is it's people. I believe you can always create a long-term competitive advantage versus any business in any industry, in any retail environment, by having a great experience with the people that you interact with. We have our employees dress up in a dress shirt with a tie. We teach them to treat our customers very kindly, and we treat our employees very, very well. And as a result, they take great care of our customers. A car wash is a natural fundraiser, so we become a great part of the community where we serve. We work with schools, with volunteer groups. Typical car wash fundraisers are in a parking lot or a driveway, which is actually not legal because of the way the water goes into the storm drain and into the waterways. So we introduced the idea of having or hosting the fundraiser at our facility so we can make more money for the cause than they'll make during that time, but we'll recycle the water and make sure it gets treated correctly in the environment. And it's just a fun way to be part of the community. So we love to sponsor schools and community groups. Lindsay Shuby is our attorney. She's going to talk about the technical application, and then we want to review both the sound and traffic study. I think that'll be important information, and then I'll quickly go through the design, and we'll be concise so that you can hear the public comments and then respond to any questions that you'll have.
Jason, thank you very much. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Lindsay Shuby. I'm with the law firm of Gamage and Burnham, 2 North Central in Phoenix, Arizona. Also, I guess, our office down here, down the street at Grady's office. Again, Jason introduced himself, the president of Quick Quack. Being that there's been a lot of interest in this case, he wanted to come by himself and make sure that we could give a full presentation and answer any questions you have. We also have Michael Clark and Joe Walters, who are part of the development team, who you'll see on the application page. We have a traffic engineer from CivTech, Dave Duffy, and we also have Mike Dickerson from MD Acoustics. So hopefully with that team in front of you can answer any questions you have. Karen touched on it in the introduction, but we are here for 3 things. Here for a DPR, for the site plan and landscape, building elevations and materials, as well as 2 car washes. 1 car wash. 1 car wash, 2 use permits. Use permit to allow a car wash in PCC1. Also a use permit to allow surface parking in excess of 125%. The site is located southeast corner of Baseline and McClintock. Again, as Karen said, 3/4 of an acre. So we're short of an acre on this corner. It has been a gas station and C-store for over 40 years. It was one of the first developments on this corner, and the gas station was closed earlier this year. I'm sure you all went by in anticipation of tonight, but this is a view of the southeast looking at the existing car wash and C-store there at McClintock and Baseline. Jason already kind of went through Quick Quack, but I think it's really important to stress what a great operator they are, what pride they take in their employees and in the experience, as well as the water capturing. I think that's an important element. I have the privilege of working in all jurisdictions all over the valley, and I know, especially in Tempe, sustainability is very important to you guys. I'm actually going to have Jason come back up right now and run through the design. Then I am going to end on the use permit test. We'll go through the use permit criteria, and then I know there's other people who want to talk.
So let's start with that slide on Baseline. That's okay. It should be slide 6.
I told him he could joke that if I mess up on the pointer, he could say it's hard to find good help. So there you go. You got to.
Yeah, let's go forward one more slide with the site layout. Yes. So this is the site layout. It shows access on the east side of McClintock Drive and south on Baseline Road. You can see the stacking is in the center of the property. We operate, I think when you can see on the previous slide, but when we first did our application, 32 car washes. We now operate 43 facilities, and we have 11 under construction in various regions where we operate car washes. This is as much stacking as we have at other locations, and certainly is sufficient for our use. I want to talk more about the design, and we can come back to traffic or stacking questions that you have later. Next slide. So I want to point out the landscaping, certainly a minimal landscape now. We think this really softens up the look of the corner and enhances what's happening here. Our first, and you can see this in the staff report, it was great working with Karen. I think we were able to come to an agreement because we agreed with everything that staff asked for. One of the first asks was February this year, was to move trees to increase the landscaping in order to block visibility to the entrance of the car wash, which again we agree makes sense. It softens up the look. And we think we have some really attractive landscaping here. Let's go to the next slide. There's multiple materials used. So we have a combination of stucco, of metal, of stone, and block. Again, this was a request that we have some different looks to change the look of the elevation so there are relief at the site. And then, if you go to the next slide, you can see the arch. Actually, let's go back one, Lindsay, if you could. See from this side. Yeah. So typically in our design, we have an arch you can see on the front of the building. It's usually attached to the building. Staff asked that we push that away from the building and then enclose that to cover the area of the entrance of the car wash. It's a little bit more expensive this way, but it's fine. And if it increases the, improves the appearance of the building, then we're happy to do it. So we moved the arch away from the building and connected it. And then let's go forward 3 more slides. Going one more after that, this one. So one of the areas that I think car washes tend to look very industrial is the canopies at the car wash. Typically it's a thin metal pole with a canvas covering. It's often bright blue or red if you look at car washes in the area. Usually the design is a giant 3 on the side of the building, regardless of who owns it. It's either a 3-minute or a $3, but it's just a 3. And then you'll see the canvas covering and metal poles. So for our vacuum canopies, you can see here, it's a hard cover so that when the sun fades that canopy, it won't look crummy, which to us is important for the long run. And then you'll see the colored concrete and the stacked stone around those columns to make it attractive. So these are all things that we worked with staff, and again, every time they asked for something that would make it more attractive, we just said yes. So we hope that you'll enjoy the design and certainly answer any questions that you have when we get to that step. I think we want to talk first about traffic and about sound.
Perfect, thanks, Jason. Okay, the use permit test, 'cause that's why we're all here, right? You guys have five standards to approve a use permit in the city of Tempe. The first, any significant increase in vehicular traffic. The proposed use satisfies that criteria. We have Dave Duffy from CivTech who's going to talk, but the long and the short of it is it generates 800 less daily trips from the gas station and convenience store, as well as closing those 2 entranceways. So Dave?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Dave Duffy. I'm with the firm CivTech, which does exclusively traffic engineering. I'm a senior traffic engineer, and though I did not do this study, I've done many studies, and including studies for car washes. The study we did was a trip generation comparison because of the limited number of expected trips. A full-blown impact statement is not required. We did look at use the ITE manual for trip generation to determine the projected trips for the existing gas station with the number of pumps, and then for the car wash based on the square footage of the building. That indicated that we had approximately half the trips in both AM and PM peak hours, as well as approximately 800 less trips during the 24-hour period. And as well as the safety is greatly improved by closing the 2 driveways closest to the intersection.
Thanks, Dave. So it does, there's no question that there's no increase, there's actually a reduction in traffic, as well as the closure of those 2 driveways. Second part of your test, nuisance arising from the emission of odor, dust, gas, noise, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare at a level exceeding that of ambient conditions. Again, I think you guys touched on this with the fire station, but ambient conditions and kind of what it's zoned for with the commercial zoning on the corner. I think noise is one of the most important ones, and we have our Mike Dickerson, our noise, who prepared our noise study, to speak to you directly on noise questions.
Good evening, Madam Commissioner, Commissioners, planning staff. Mike Dickerson, resident of Gilbert, Arizona, office MD Acoustics in Chandler, Arizona. So basically, just to reiterate, Chapter 20, Section 6 and 7 of the municipal ordinance is the City of Tempe's noise ordinance. The city's residential daytime standard per their ordinance is 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and they have a noise standard of 55 dBA at the property line for residential uses, which would be the most sensitive adjacent use south of the project site. Baseline measurements confirm that the city noise ordinance is exceeded by the ambient condition during certain times of the day. Per the city's noise ordinance, if the ambient condition is exceeded by the actual ambient, then the actual ambient becomes a community noise standard. However, noise measurements were taken over a 24-hour period, and those levels were averaged over a hourly, over each hour. So we'd have 24 noise readings, and we looked at the quietest hour during your typical operating hours. The ambient noise levels indicate that the hourly average noise levels range between 49.2 to 65.2 dBA. I'd also like to reiterate, because I have to remind myself, a modification to the noise study was submitted on 11/14, and that modification was submitted to planning staff on page 1 and page 16. There's an existing 6-foot wall that separates the residential land use from the commercial land use of the Pollock Commercial Center. It was estimated that wall would reduce the traffic noise an additional 5 dB. So thereby, it would actually change the measured ambient noise level from 44.2 to 60.2. Noise level measurements weren't made on the other side of that wall because access wasn't allowed, and also really the safety of the equipment not being stolen and stuff like that, and being tampered with. That being said, since the actual ambient condition exceeded the, let me go back here. It says, however, since a 5 dBA reduction was applied to the noise readings, the city's 55 dBA limit would actually be the more conservative approach here, because if we apply a 5 dBA reduction in the measured level, it would be 57 dB, and the city has a not to exceed 55. So we went with a more conservative approach here on this. Therefore, the study compares the project operational noise level and also the project plus ambient condition. So there's two conditions that we reviewed. The project only operational noise levels are anticipated to range between 38.1 to 50 dBA, depending on the residential receptor. And the project plus ambient noise level condition, when you look at the quietest hour that we looked at, would be between 52.5 to 54.6. In both scenarios, we actually show that it's below the city's 55 limit. And the project would therefore comply with the city's ordinance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at a later time.
I think one thing, Madam Chair and Commissioners, that you can ask Jason about as president and Mike after, is part of Quick Quack's design in terms of it being all encompassed. I don't know enough about that, but it does very much mitigate the noise to ensure that we're below noise standards in the city of Tempe. So just going back, second criteria is the noise, heat, odor, dust, gas, vibration, smoke, glare, noise. We comply with the city noise ordinance limitations. Heat, the majority of the parking spots are shaded by the trellis because the majority of the parking spots are for vacuuming, not for parking. And the proposed use will not generate odor, dust, gas, vibration, smoke, or heat or glare, exceeding that of ambient conditions of the former gas station or convenience store. As you see, there's a major increase in landscaping. We're proposing, I want to make sure I get it right, 26% landscaping where 15% is required. Third test, contribute to the deterioration of the neighborhood or downgrading of property values. Again, what we're comparing this to is a 40-year-old gas station and convenience store that's been operating on this lot. The proposed use will be less intense by traffic and noise traffic standards for sure than the former gas station, and it will not contribute to neighborhood deterioration or downgrading of property values. It was stated in your staff report that the new upgraded architecture will be a nice addition to the corner as far as the analysis of staff. Fourth, compatible with existing surrounding structures and uses. It's not out of character with the historical gas station and convenience store that was on there, and or the other corners. You know, you think about the other corner, the car dealership, the U.S. Bank, El Pollo Loco, it fits within the corner. Last test that you guys have in the city of Tempe, adequate control of disruptive behavior both inside and outside the premises. We will have video surveillance, employees present all during all hours of operations, and you know, employees look to their leadership as far as behavior, and Jason does pride himself on his employees and how they treat their customers. So that's something that's very, very important to us. At night, the tunnel will be secured on either end, as well as the surveillance cameras, so to be a secure location on this corner. In closing, and I know we've got other people that want to talk, and I'm sure we'll come up again for a little rebuttal, but the proposal is consistent with the general plan and the land use designation on the category, or on the land use category on the property. We meet the approval criteria, and we're here with the recommendation of approval from your staff, and we're in agreement with all the stipulations as proposed. So with that, respectfully, I request approval. I can answer any questions now, or any member of our team, or we can wait.
Any questions at this time, the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We will open the meeting for the public hearing. I'm going to read comments into the record of those who do not wish to speak. And I want to assure everyone who may be watching on Channel 11 or in the audience that your letters and emails have all become part of the permanent, the record and public record, and will go on to City Council. This is a phone call received at 4:51 p.m. today from Evelyn Barber. It's a fine project, but not the right location. Too close to the corner, it will make traffic difficult, and it won't look good for the area. This is, and I'm sorry, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the first name, but the last name is Singh, who just says no car wash. Sandher is apparently opposed. Do you want to wish to speak? You don't have comments. Sandher? Okay. If you're wait, I'll call you later. That's okay. I'll just call you up. Shannon Marie Fisher Green. Something the quick car wash, because there are several car washes in the area, do not feel it benefits the community. Also feel it's not the type of business structure to be developed less than 2 blocks from our neighborhood. Sharon Elsner, I am for the case. I have another Singh who is opposed. Waljit Handal, I'm against the car wash. Another Singh who opposes. Singh, I do not want car wash. Singh, no car wash. Chris Green, I'm opposed to Quick Quack car wash for noise and traffic concerning property value and not beneficial for the neighborhood. Janine Singh, no car wash. Singh Moulton, no car wash. And then I have individuals who wish to give their time, which again is not part of our process here. So if you would like to speak, Anthony Dinar. Do you want to speak? No. Okay. Cheryl Pollock. Robert Pollock. Okay, I'll call you in a minute then. And then Teresa Straley. Okay, thank you. All right, now we'll start the, Ms. Rose has requested to speak first. I will allow that. I understand you've also asked to do a PowerPoint. I'm not going to allow that in the interest of time, so if you'll just use your 2 minutes, and I would appreciate that.
Certainly, and Chair, my PowerPoint is under 2 minutes, if that's helpful.
We'd just like to hear from you.
Certainly.
Thank you.
My name is Jordan Rose with Rose Law Group, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Michael Pollock. If I put up one of the exhibits, I can show you his property actually surrounds the entire car wash. The neighbors have been working through this issue for some time, and we've found that in every instance, your adopted general plan, the goals, the use permit criteria, which I would walk you through, but I'll just mention a few of them. The tests for these things with this quick quack on 2 major arterial corners just fails. This would be, we looked all through Tempe, and as you know, there are no standalone self-serve car washes, but for one that we could find on 2 major corners. And there's a reason. These are off-corner locations. That's where we're not against Mr. Johnson's business. We think his story is great, very impressive, but we are against the location. It fails your enhanced quality of life, your land use goal, your community design goal, your redevelopment goal, your pedestrian goals, your noise reduction, your human services goals. There's 106 neighbors, and I have an exhibit of the neighborhood opposed to this. All of the surrounding neighbors, all of those residential neighbors. They tried to elicit support. They went to a community meeting that your staff mentioned. 100% of those neighbors came, and they were opposed because it's just not the right place. The vehicular traffic will increase. The gas station closed for a reason. It closed because it wasn't being trafficked enough. The odor, the dust, the noise, the nuisance, there are 16 vacuum stalls that are running from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day, every single day, and that noise will increase. The deterioration of neighborhood values. This is a welcome to the neighborhood with a 30-foot duck. That's the design of this of the building, and it's not compatible with these surrounding buildings. And I appreciate your time. Thank you, Chair and Commission members.
Okay. Now, Mr. Sandher. Would you come to the podium, please?
I'm against the car wash because I have another location on the baseline and the road. We do have a car wash, and I wouldn't need another car wash in there. Because if they are coming in, they are kill our business, and we have to close. That's I don't support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Pollock.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, and present company. My personal research, including multiple driving around the proposed area, research into the business itself and how it operates in other locations, and negative impacts on the possible residents in the area, has led me to need to oppose this use as both a resident of Tempe and as a licensed real estate professional. Thank you for your time.
Maureen Atwood.
Hello, thank you for your time. I live in the Lakes community, just kind of behind the Chapman dealership across from this project. And I just wanted to get up here and say that just as many people that are opposed to it, there's just as many community members that either don't care or are in favor of it. And I think a lot of people are coming to voice their opinion against it, but people don't usually get out there to say, hey, I'm for this, because it doesn't matter to them. So with that being said, I also think that it's a beautiful building. I think it complements El Pollo Loco's building. And as a busy full-time working mom, I would love to have a car wash to zip through and get it clean. We don't have anything else like that in our neighborhood as far as the drive-through type of car wash. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Dwayne Washkowiak. I apologize for
We're close.
mangling names.
Dwayne Washkowiak, I live at 1861 East Colgate, right south, about 2 blocks south of where the proposed car wash is going in. First of all, Madam Chair and Commissioners, thank you for your service. I also serve on Tempe commissions. I know it's a commitment, so thank you for that. 3 points I want to make. One, I did some research. I'm in the real estate business. The recommended size for a car wash of this type by the National Car Wash Association is 1 acre or more. This particular site does not meet that test. I also did some research locally in Tempe. Competitors of what Quick Quack would offer all are over on a 1 acre parcel. So I think the use and the intended use on this site just doesn't work. I think the concerns about traffic and public safety are another huge concern. We've added about 20 apartments just to the west on Baseline. That traffic hasn't all hit Baseline yet. So when we put a facade that's 30 feet high, I'm concerned about the traffic accidents I've seen at that corner already in the 30 years I've lived there. I think it's going to complicate that also. Great idea for a car wash, wrong location. Thank you.
Thank you. Neil Straley.
Thank you very much. Yeah, God, I just drew a blank, I'm sorry. I'm upfront, I am totally against the design, the location. You've all got your position because of your expertise, your knowledge, and your skills in doing your job. And I hope that you really look at this as, if you lived in my neighborhood, what would you do? So I'm asking you to take what everybody's saying, weigh it, and come up with a decent decision. And the last thing I'd like to say is, and I hate to say it, but if it doesn't fit, you have to dismiss. So thank you.
Thank you. C. Alex Carasieta.
Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. I just wanted to add some perspective. So I didn't think this would be useful, but from 2007, 2009, I actually lived in Texas, Lubbock, Texas, went there for my master's degree, Texas Tech. 3 Quick Quacks. I happen to live by one of them, and I think one of the issues with some of the people is that it's loud, it's an ugly structure, we don't really want that close by, and I live by one. And to be completely honest with you guys, it's the only time in my life I'd ever had a membership to a car wash. It was Quick Quack Car Wash from 2007 to 2009. I haven't had one since. I probably would consider it again if they came back. I thought it was a really pleasant experience. The staff was, in my opinion, better dressed than I was as a bank teller. I mean, they really looked pretty sharp. It was very reasonable, almost too, I mean, I think that's part of the reason why I did it. It was insanely reasonable and very, very affordable from that standpoint. And I thought it was a good thing for the community. And so I'm for the car wash, and I just wanted to share some perspective on what it's like to live by one. That was 8 years ago. There's been a lot of technology and change in the car wash space, so I'm sure it's only gotten better. And if it wasn't noisy then, I don't think it's going to be noisy now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Patty Easton.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I made some notes while I was sitting over here listening this evening to all the presentations. As you said, my name is Patty Easton. I live at 1854 East Harvard Drive in Tempe, the street directly behind the southeast corner of McClintock and Baseline. As a community member of 35 years, I oppose Quick Quack Car Wash. I support growth and expansion, but with that must come respect and care for the area and the people that growth and expansion will affect. And that does affect us neighbors who live directly behind that corner. I was impressed with the sentiment that the gentleman shared regarding the Farmers Art District project, in that their planning took into account the tenants, the passers-by, the not obstructing the nearby businesses, and the aesthetic value that it would bring to the community. This is good for Tempe revenue, as well as the enjoyment of the Tempe citizens. However, what will Quick Quack bring? It will bring unnecessary increased traffic. I don't buy the numbers that they projected on the screen of 800 less trips per day. That sounds unbelievable to me. And in terms of the noise and pollution, I think 0.5 under the limitation for the noise requirement is also unbelievable for me. Having the 16 bays that they have there, I just don't believe the safety. I think it's a potential loitering situation. It's open too many days per week. Handicapped people live in our neighborhood, and they utilize those street corners on a daily basis. I don't feel it's a safe location for such an establishment as that. Also, health hazards with the fans and the allergies and the already poor air quality that we deal with. I also feel it devalues the properties in the neighborhood. This is not the type of thing that we want on that street corner. Bring in something that will increase values, increase the aestheticness of the community. The height of that building will obstruct the view of the business owners in that complex. And I know I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Jamie Burt. Okay. Kelly Anderson.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Anderson. I'm as close as anybody to this proposed site. I can see it from my property. And the gas station did have a lot of traffic. It was 8 pumps, I believe, or eight hoses. So there was a lot of traffic. This car wash is going to bring significantly less, especially if they take out 2 of the driveways. And it's beautiful buildings. I've seen the artist's conception of it. It's gorgeous, and it falls in line with El Pollo Loco across the street with natural colors and stone. It's beautiful. And as far as noise, today, I was questioning it myself. So I drove to 2 different car washes, large ones, biggest ones I know of on Kyrene and Baseline and Elliott and 56th Street, and I started walking away. At 100 feet, I could still hear the car wash. I think it was what it was. It might have been the ambient traffic. But I kept walking. At 200 feet, I could hear absolutely no noise from the largest car washes I know of. The place is gorgeous. And I don't want a check cashing place or a title loan place to go up in there, and that's what takes over these small buildings because they're turnkey for them. A car wash is gorgeous. My wife and daughter saw it and are thrilled. If my wife and daughter are happy, I'm happy. So I'm all for it.
Thank you. Randy Saxton.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm a property owner. I live just north of the intersection. I worked diligently against the Fry's gas station a little while back because of the increased traffic. So this will be a welcome decrease in traffic in our neighborhood. They've gone out of their way to make it beautiful. I think it's great that they're giving the city the setback for the buses. That's pretty cool. And like the other gentleman just said, I like having a nice new building in the neighborhood, something bright and new looking. So I'm definitely in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ralph Braken.
Commissioners, I live at 5419 South Lighthouse Lane in Lakes. I've been there for 27 years. Also, I'd like you to know I'm a commercial real estate broker and an MAI appraiser. I've been doing that for 40 years. When we do analysis on properties, we look at a concept of highest and best use. And this project's available for rent and for development. And right now, the highest and best use, the highest person to come by for use has been this car wash. So at the present time, the highest and best use for this site is the car wash, unless someone is willing to come in with a different use to lease it at a higher rate and for a longer term. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Race.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mark Race. I live at 1874 East Harbor Drive, which is the street directly behind. You know, unlike the Tempe Fire Station number 7 that you were talking about earlier, I don't believe that we need the noise from a car wash in our area. The reason is we've got a car wash every which way I go. North, south, east, west, they're everywhere already. So that's one of my biggest concerns is what value, what is it really bringing to the area? Just another car wash, in my opinion. The gal earlier talked about she wants a car wash where she can get in and out. Well, Francis and Sons at McClintock and McClintock and Guadalupe, $5 express wash, you drive through, you get out. So there it is, it's just down the street. The other thing is, and I took this off of the Quick Quack website, At Quick Quack Car Wash, we use powerful dryers or blowers at the end of the cycle to remove most of the water used to rinse the car in the car wash. There will, however, always be some amount of water left on your car. So in addition to the powerful blowers that I think are going to make a significant amount of noise that is going to impact our neighborhood, I'm also a little bit concerned about the water that you're going to be dragging into the street constantly. In this particular location where it's set up, you're going to exit their tunnel and immediately go out to the street, dragging that water into the street, which is going across the bike lane. I think bicyclists are going to be driving through water continuously 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. So there's that. The locations for Quick Quack that I found on Google, I just went on Google, looked at all the Quick Quack locations around, Texas, California, Utah. They don't look anything like those architectural drawings. I got to tell you that right now. I urge you to please take a look at those to get a feel for really what these car washes look like. They're just nothing at all like the beautiful architectural drawings they're showing us. I think car washes in general are dirty. I don't think they're the pillars of the community by any stretch of the imagination.
Your time is up, so if you'll wrap up.
I got that, and I would just like to say, yeah, I support putting something on that corner, just not another car wash.
Thank you.
Thank you.
June Race.
Hello, my name is June Reyes, and I live at 1874 East Harvard Drive. So I back up basically to the corner of the car wash, and what we find is the noise. And I drove around to many car washes also, and it's loud. We want to sit in our backyard. Our neighbors want to sit in their backyard. Pedestrians are walking there. They put a bike lane there in McClintock. And the whole point was for us to be outside, to be walking, to be kind of more of an urban community. But we can't do that if it's so loud. We don't even want to be on that corner. That's one of the issues. The other thing, when I researched the internet, what I found was a lot of people that lived near car washes, it was okay for a while, but what happened is when they upgraded their systems, they got so powerful and so loud that the neighbors couldn't sleep at night. They also went from 7 to 9, and then they changed it to 24/7. So that's another issue that I don't want to see happen in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Troy Jarvis.
Thank you. My name is Troy Jarvis. I'm president of the Jarvis Group with Launch Real Estate. And I'd like to oppose the car wash for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think the developer even said it's a very industrial type building, and I think staff was saying that they wanted to put as much landscaping around it to basically hide it. And I think that is kind of a telling story of what this building's about. Very colorful, whatever. It's really not pleasant to the community. Secondly, I'm just here to evaluate for residential. I've been doing residential real estate for 23 years here in the Valley, and because of the difference in the noise, there's a noise factor and then there's a car wash noise factor. If you start up a vacuum, how it's a squealing noise, that kind of a situation, it's not like a normal noise. And that's what you're getting on a constant basis, is that slow, is that really squealy type of a sound. So I think that this car wash here will actually depreciate the values of the homes nearby.
Thank you. This next one, I apologize again. Sumhashim Tahi. Ehathi. Okay. Gil Singh. Do you wish to speak? They're opposed. Amarjeet Singh, would you like to speak, or just you're opposed? Mike Martinez.
No, I'm
Opposed. Justin Whitney.
Hi, thank you. I live at 1841 East Harvard Drive, which is just directly southeast of the site. I've lived there for about 5 years. I live there with my girlfriend, and both of us are opposed to the car wash at that site. I put some of these details in email, so I'll just add to what I've said in the past in opposition. I've cycled about 4,000 miles, leaving from or arriving at my property, which is like right in this area. I've dodged any number of cars over the years, both before we had the bicycle lanes on McClintock and after. I've actually sat and having taken the bus that's from the bus stop that sits just directly north of this property and watched car accidents at the gas station that was previously there. So this is a high traffic area. It's difficult for cyclists. And there were already accidents. Even if there's a slight reduction in the number of cars entering or exiting, I think it's a concern, and it's a backward step given the addition of the bicycle lanes to have even a property there that's even half of the traffic that there was prior. The second thing I wanted to say is I was dubious that the noise would really be a concern. I took a trip to Sacramento and went to a Quick Quack car wash and actually left slightly more concerned than I'd started. The noise isn't terribly loud if you're 300, 400, 500 feet away. The concern is, as another gentleman pointed out, it's a constant noise, and it is audible from where you are, from where we would be on Harvard Drive. So for those reasons, I'd like to voice my opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Winston Singh? Sorry.
My name is Winston Shea. I'm not Singh. I'm the owner right south of this proposed car wash, 5225 South McClintock Drive. I own 3 buildings over there, and thank you for me to hear this. I don't know what I have to decide, but after I listen to all the proposal, I believe it's a good proposal, and it's a very careful design and all study. I think we should give them a chance. I will believe. I think this is something will make the whole neighborhood better, and I think car wash is a good service, and they already do all the study. So I fully support this proposal. Thank you.
Larry Brash.
My name is Larry Brash. I live at 1837 East Harvard. I am opposed to the car wash. There was a young lady earlier that said she was a young mother, and I know that in Florida last year or two there's been a lot of mosquito problems. Mosquitoes thrive in stagnant water. We don't want that. We don't want the noise. We already have enough. We have airplanes, we have sirens, we have traffic many hours of the day, unwanted. We can't sit in our backyard and enjoy it anymore. We built a backyard to enjoy. We've profited by investing in these houses, and by that we've had a neighborhood that we can stand by each other. Now that's going by the wayside because people are actually going to leave our community because of something that's being put in a home that we bought 25 years ago. We couldn't see that down the road, but it's being imposed on us. We choose not to have a car wash. Thank you.
Thank you. Dale Burt.
Council, thank you for your time. My wife, Jamie, and I are the owners of the underlying land on that property there. We have a ground lease with Quick Quack Car Wash. That parcel has had an automotive-based use since it was first developed 44 years ago. We repaired cars, sold gas, propane, ran a convenience store for 27 years, and we lived in that neighborhood for 7 years before that. When the infrastructure of the gas station got old, we decided to transition into a new, environmentally friendly automotive use. That's a car wash that recycles 100% of the water used and uses biodegradable soaps. When the city asked for land to build a bus pull-out on the corner, we dedicated a 10-foot easement along the frontage of Baseline Road, arguably the most valuable part of that parcel. Jamie and I believe Quick Quack would carry on our tradition of being a good neighbor in the immediate area as well as the entire community by offering an environmentally sustainable alternative to water-wasting traditional car washes. We look forward to the peaceful enjoyment of the property that we've worked so hard for. We feel this allowed use within the existing zone would be a substantial benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Crow. Bob, you're up next if you want to. Bob Crow is up next if you'd like to follow. Okay, Bob Crow is opposed.
Hi, I'm Patricia Crow. I live at 1830 East Harvard Drive for 37 years in a very quiet, tranquil neighborhood. And I'm opposed to Quick Quack because I think it's an inappropriate use of that corner. Thank you.
Thank you. Sylvia Orioli.
Good evening. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk in front of the Development Review Commission to let you know how I feel about Quick Quack Car Wash. I'm hoping that some of you have received some of the opposition letters that we have been sending City Hall, and many of you should have received today the online petition that we have started with change.org that is opposed to use permit for Quick Quack Car Wash. This online petition was started on the 3rd of December. We currently have 82 supporters who are in opposition of this Quick Quack Car Wash. They are from our neighbors on Tempe, Harvard Drive on Tempe, our surrounding neighbors in Oxford, and people that live in our area. There are people that are so opposed to this car wash. Number one, if you put a 3-story building with a wall on McClintock, it is going to lose visibility from the area. When it was a car wash, it was functional. You could buy gas, you could buy other things. It was serving more people than a car wash. A car wash will serve cars. They will wash cars, and even though they will be fundraisers, one question I do have for Mr. Johnson is, where is the overflow traffic going to go? There is no extra space on his lot. Will it enter into Harvard Drive, which is, we are to the very next street south of this intersection. Also, what I'd also like to say is I feel that our property values will be lowered. Our quality of life is being diminished by the sounds that we have already in our neighborhood. Please bring something that brings multi-use, multi-function so that all people can enjoy it. Pedestrians, people that are not able to walk on their own, and to everybody in the city of Tempe, you would be doing them a favor by opposing this Quick Quack Car Wash. Thank you.
Janae Caracedo.
I apologize. I had a sleeping baby before I started the trek up here, but now he's awake. I am in favor of Quick Quack Car Wash. My parents are the owners of the property and previously operated the gas station that operated there for many years. I think that there's a lot of opposition that I'm hearing in regards to the character of the car wash on that corner. If you look at the businesses that surround that corner, it is actually a good use and an improvement upon some of the buildings and the appearance of the surrounding area. So I think that it'll be a beautiful addition to the neighborhood. I also think that something we need to do is refocus on the facts. I know there are a lot of misconceptions about many different businesses, and there are a lot of things that people believe will or won't happen with this type of business, but there have been studies that have been done with regards to the noise, with regards to pollution and traffic, and I think refocusing on the facts would help us. And again, I support the car wash.
Thank you. Beth Isaacs.
Hello, I'm Beth Isaacs, and I live at 619 East Wesleyan Drive in Tempe. I've been a Tempe resident for over 30 years, and I am completely in favor of the car wash. I used to go to Classic Car Wash, and that was, I enjoyed the atmosphere of that. That closed. Since then, over the last few years, I've had a really hard time finding a car wash that had caring service, that had friendly service. The last experiences I've had, you go there and they're bartering for your price, and it's not a good feeling. It's been feeling like they're just want your money and not really caring about their business that they have, all the employees. My second point is, as Janae had said just right before this, that our
people that are supporting the car wash have done research and came to you with facts about the noise level, and every point of compliance within Tempe was met, as you heard, the noise level especially, the vehicular traffic, even less traffic, which is extremely important, less traffic than the gas station that has been there running day and night. This car wash won't be running through the night. Another point, we talked about the noise level, and and this car wash will be one that will bring class and professionalism to the town of Tempe, to the services of car wash. And I know there's going to be caring involved, and so I think it will only enhance Tempe for years to come. And in that area, and being a Tempe resident, I'm very proud to support that in a caring institution. Thank you.
Thank you. I only have one more request, Michael Pollock. If anyone else still wants to say something, if you'd please fill out a card.
I filled one out.
Okay. Michael, if you want to go ahead and come up, and then we'll get your comments.
That was my version of running. My name is Michael Pollock, 1136 West Baseline Road, Mesa, Arizona. And in the interest of time, I just want to say, if you think about what we've heard tonight, I know that after listening to some of your comments, when you look at the elevations, you're not going to say that this is a beautiful building. You're not going to say this is a building that's fantastic. You're not going to say this is a use that's going to help the neighborhood. When you think about the noise level, they're talking about 16 vacuums. Not 3, 4, 5, 6, 16 vacuums. We're talking about a car wash with a car count, and they're saying, I believe they said, that it's less than, or it's going to be 800 less cars a day. Well, I mean, let's think about it. If we're going to believe that, it's a car wash, for God's sakes. It has cars. It goes against what the city of Tempe, as far as I've known for a long time, is trying to accomplish. And you have the ability, this is not something that's a reuse where they're going to reuse the existing building like I do in so many places. They're going to tear it down and they're going to put up a new building. And you have every right to say that's not what we want. The neighborhood has spoken. They've told you what they want. I could go get a bunch of friends and relatives from all over, but that's not going to do any good. The truth is, it's just not the right use for this particular corner. It's less than an acre. It's too small. It's like putting a round peg into a square hole. And last, but I want to make sure I make it crystal clear, we own the center next door, of course, and there is no reciprocal easement agreements. There is no cross access. So if they do overflow, there is no place for them to overflow. And if you look at the design and you look at the way the traffic patterns are, if I thought it would work, I'd be all for it. But I can't believe it's going to work. And I know that many of you have seen plans before. I heard some of your comments earlier. If you look at the way that thing actually flows, it doesn't flow. It doesn't work. And I just wanted to make sure that I shared those things with you. And I hope tonight that you'll make the right decision on behalf of the great city of Tempe. Thank you very much for affording me the time to speak. With appreciation.
We have a question for you.
Certainly.
Mr. Pollock, quickly, what is the right use for that corner?
Oh, as far as I'm concerned, number one, I will say this, one of the worst uses would be a car wash. What would the right use be? I'd like to see something, and I think the neighbors that you've heard from and the ones that aren't here tonight that have sent notices in and letters in, what they want to see is something that we can walk to, something that would flow and be in harmony with the neighborhood, not just cars. Let's have it where somebody could ride their bike over there, they could walk there. What are you going to walk to the car wash for? Why would you do that? How could you ever think that...
That's good, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for me? I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the gentleman in the blue shirt, if you'd come up and give yes. Other blue shirt, I'm sorry. You first, and then I'll take you.
Sorry, I did fill one of these out and hand it in, so I don't know what happened. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Dave Hauk. I live at 1517 East Palomino Drive and have been a happy resident of Tempe for a little over 36 years. I'm here to voice my approval for the project for several reasons. I really like the recycling and recapturing of the water. I can appreciate that the prior owner allowed for the bus pull-out, the bus shelter. And I think these guys will be a great new neighbor to South Tempe. I will use it as I have B&B Pools, Ace Hardware, Pollo Loco, Señor Taco, and Ace Hardware. I think it will be a fantastic, good neighbor and an environmentally friendly neighbor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the other gentleman.
Good evening. My name is Lloyd Plates, and I live at 1817 East Harbor Drive. I'm the first house east of McClintock. And I would like to share 3 facts with you and relate them to a baseball analogy. Fact number 1, the lot is too small. This is why Quick Quack wants a zoning variance. By too small, the lot size is 33,367 square feet. 1 acre is 43,560 square feet. And we've already heard that all of the other car washes that they have are 1 acre or more. So this lot is over 10,000 square feet less than needed. And that's why they want a zoning variance. That is strike number 1. Fact number 2, the safety. The building to be constructed is going to be 27 to 30 feet tall and a length of 115 feet. This structure will only be 20 feet from either the curb or the sidewalk of northbound traffic on McClintock. What do you think that's going to do to the site for traffic going northbound on traffic? They're not going to be able to see through that building. Not only that, the general public, the police department, and the fire department. The fire department's only 2 blocks south of there.
You need to finish up.
Approximately 55% of the calls from the fire department go northbound. And that's strike number 2. The last fact I have is there are other car washes in the area. 1 mile to the east, 1 mile to the west, 1 mile north, 1 mile south. We don't need it. That's strike number 3. And as in baseball, they say strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. You're out of here, Quick Quack.
Thank you.
Look at all the people with no car.
Okay, no public display, please. Yes, if you would. Okay, if you approach the podium and give your name.
Good evening. I am Caitlin, this is Sarah. We just bought a home at 1833 East Harbor Drive. Looks like we are the youngest couple on our block. And I don't think we would have bought our home had there been a Quick Quack there, to be honest. We are literally renovating and remodeling our entire home to not look like it was built in the 70s and help that neighborhood be more appealing, and this Quick Quack is going to ruin all that and devalue our home as well.
Yes. One thing I was going to point out, since we just got the home, we're doing all this work to it. I've been going in the Ace Hardware in that same area all the time, and so I believe loitering is also going to be a concern. There's a Peter Piper right there, and every time I've been in the Ace Hardware, there's kids up and down the street right there, right by the car wash. Every day there's tons of kids of all ages, and I just think that's a concern also.
We are opposed. Please help us.
Yes.
We moved here because I fell in love with Tempe and the sustainability aspects of it. Please help us.
You have a question?
Can we get both your names on the record?
Yes. Caitlin Hafner.
Sarah Oswald.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak? Come forward. I'm sorry. The lights, I can't see you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for allowing me a moment. My name is Patrick Cassidy. I'm a retail commercial broker. I live in Sun Lakes, Arizona, of course. I've heard a lot of the same, I don't want to say rhetoric, but the same concerns. But there's one area I think we're overlooking. I hadn't planned to speak until it dawned on me, an area we have overlooked completely, and that is the tenants in that shopping center, the visibility, the obstruction with a 30-foot building. Visibility is imperative for the survival of these retail tenants. They put a lot of hard-earned money, their livelihoods, the supporting of their families, and that becomes a threat. Because now instead of having a center that's 100% occupied for nearby residents to walk to and shop, the threat now is maybe a few businesses that are no longer there, because visibility is imperative for the survival of those tenants. And picture yourself as one of those tenants. Now you're not able to be seen from the roadway. So that's what I wanted to share with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and give the applicant the opportunity to address the issues raised.
Okay, just going to try and address them with my notes one at a time. First of all, I wanted to comment on the architecture. This is different than our typical car wash. And maybe you've seen it at other locations, we typically have a very bright yellow and white, our corporate colors. Again, working with staff, that wasn't something that fit well with the community or with the city's design guidelines, and so we've gone with a very different design, I think a very attractive design here. So I admit that this is different than our typical design. The other thing that's been brought up a lot is this idea of 1 acre. So the car wash industry is very fragmented, and one of the things that the industry struggles with is data. So there was an ICA, International Car Wash Association, excuse me. There was an International Car Wash Association 1 acre recommendation cited. One of my frustrations with our industry associations was they have no data that they're working from. And so it becomes incestuous rather than data-driven. So I worked with the ICA to try and get data from car washes to improve this issue, because it only helps me when I'm trying to get financing if there's better data. Unfortunately, only 16 car washes participated. At the time, we had 9 of those, and so the ICA shut down all of the data gathering. So this idea of 1 acre being ideal is actually not accurate. We have many sites that are smaller than 1 acre. We can handle our use just fine with no stacking issues, much smaller than 1 acre lots. This is an ideal location and size for us, and so we're not worried about this 1 acre idea at all. It just doesn't hold true. It's not accurate. We can address that more as you go with your questions you might have, but also just wanted to comment on our brand. The idea of a brand in America is a big deal. It signals not just what the name of the business is, but something about the quality of the business. So Pollo Loco across the street has a chicken on their sign. It's because it represents something to the consumer about what that business is, what quality of business. Some hotels will have different brands, and each one represents a different quality. And so when you put a recognizable sign like a cow for Chick-fil-A or a duck for Quick Quack or a chicken for Pollo Loco, it's significant. And I hope that'll be an important part of our business, is it'll signal a really good, high-quality car wash with great people. As far as the noise, I wanted to address this. There are 16 parking spaces for vacuums. However, there's only 2 vacuum producers, and they're enclosed with a governor on the sound, and this is a big deal to us. You have to understand that when we looked at this business, when I looked at this and did this business plan, we looked at all of these issues and said, how could we mitigate noise? How could we handle the water issue? So each vacuum stall doesn't have a vacuum at it. There's 2 large producers. It's a central vacuum system with a building enclosure around it and a sound suppression system. So if you're 5 feet away from that vacuum producer, you won't hear any sound. The sound that you do hear that's measured is actually the blowers, They're facing the street, not the residents, and that's a big deal because it minimizes all that sound, and we have a sound study for those reasons. We want long-term customers. We want the residents right next to us to be our friends and our customers, and so we take into account those issues as we plan a site and as we worked with staff. Restricted hours would deal with the noise. I think that was already addressed. We don't run 24/7. There was one other question about overflow traffic. I think I addressed that in the site issue of 1 acre. Ours is not a full-service car wash, and when we do a fundraiser, I think that was the question, we don't make that a full-service car wash either. All we do is give a percentage of our profits to the charity, and we run our very normal process. So it doesn't increase traffic on a fundraiser. We just give some of our profits to the fundraiser for that time period that's allocated for the fundraiser. So hopefully that addresses the questions. If there are others that weren't addressed for you, I'd certainly be willing to answer those now.
Staff, is there a stipulation for hours of operation in this, in your recommendation?
There is no stipulation that could be added if the commission desires that.
Applicant, what is your anticipated hours of operation? Do they vary by days of the week? And would you be amenable to a stipulation built into this?
Yes, we would be amenable to that. Our hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and we'd like that to match the sound study, which is what was done. So we'd be fine with a 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Stipulation in the approval.
7 days a week? It doesn't vary by day?
Right.
Okay, Lindsay, did you want to address any other issues? Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner Brown?
You've answered one of my questions, which has to do with the central sound system. You did state that there was no sound 5 feet away. I think maybe did I misunderstand something? Are you saying that it's silent 5 feet away?
I'm talking about just the vacuum producer. The vacuum producer is very, very quiet. There is sound from the blowers in the car wash, so there is measurable sound at the edge of the property.
Yes, so the blowers, you mean the blow off the excess water?
That's right. The dryers would be another word.
Okay, so the vacuum itself, and I actually visited the car wash at Kyrene and Baseline. It was not that noisy. I was surprised. I also was surprised to find out that a lot of the neighbors there use the car wash for free. If someone pulls in and uses a car wash, is that, I'm sorry, the vacuum system.
Right.
Is this something that occurs spontaneously in several locations?
It is. We occasionally get confession emails of customers who have used vacuums and not paid for a car wash. It does happen.
Okay.
Yes.
But I was surprised that the noise really seemed to be the hissing of the actual nozzle. Is this the kind where there's a nozzle on each side of each car?
Yes.
You pull it out and back
So
away?
there also will be noise right at the individual station when you pull the nozzle off. There'll be noise there. But again, there's no producer of noise there. It's just the sucking sound from the vacuum that's many feet away.
Okay, let's touch now on this hours of stipulation. I would suggest that 10 o'clock is bedtime for a lot of people, and a lot of us are up before 7. So the 7 doesn't bother me. But the 10 is perhaps a little later. I'm not sure if we want to negotiate on the fly, but I would suggest that that's probably not much of a restriction in the noise hours.
Yeah, the reason, well, first of all, those are our hours, and I'd prefer to have that. But the sound study, I think, will confirm that up until 10 p.m., that the ambient noise is quite a bit louder than the car wash, and so I don't believe it'll be an issue for anybody during those hours. And so I'd like to keep those hours if we could, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Now let's step on one other issue. The building is kind of bulky and tall. It looks from the section views and the drawings that it's only the bottom half of that 30 feet is used for the enclosure. So I would suggest that when people experience your great brand and they'll remember where it is, as you cited, people perhaps can't even, the average customer may not remember where they had the car wash, the name of the car wash that they've been using. So I would guess that maybe promoting that quick quack duck tail facing the street is one of the reasons I oppose this is the appearance of the building is really kind of bulky and more than it needs to be. I'm not in favor of big signs. My thought is that people find the customers or find the businesses that serve their needs, and they go there, and in fact don't even need to know the name of the business after a while. Is that something that you're set on, the size of that building?
I'd like to keep it as proposed. I think it's within code both for signing ordinance and for the height, and so I'd like to keep that as proposed.
I understand. Thank you.
A question of staff regarding the sign, is that something that goes through a separate process, is that correct? So that's not part of what we're voting on today in terms of signage, that will have to go through a different process.
I understand that fully. We touched on that, and I did use the word sign, but I mean, in this case, the whole building itself is promoting the quack, which is a strategy for design, but I find it to be a bit
Other
much.
than it doesn't look like any of their other car washes.
I understand.
That's fine. Question of staff regarding the use permit. Is that something we can put a time requirement on and have it renewable so that if there are issues, that has to be dealt with at some date specific?
Chairperson, the commission can indeed have a stipulation for hours of operation, and you can also add a stipulation that the applicant come back within 6 months or 1 year of opening date for review of the request to see if it's in compliance with any conditions.
Okay. Other questions? Commissioners?
Sorry, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, sir, and be able to finance the project with that kind of a requirement. So I just want to understand if that would work for you.
Yeah, the 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. time?
Come back and check in again, see if you're in compliance, that requirement.
Seems reasonable.
Okay.
I'll weigh in on this. Over the years, we've had a requirement to revisit specifically the use permit. It's happened oftentimes with bars and restaurants where there was noise issues bleeding into the neighborhood, exterior patios. So we've requested 6 months of operation and data so that we can come back, see if there's been noise complaints, verified noise complaints, loitering and police calls, those kinds of things. It hasn't impeded the business's ability to go out and get financing and open up. So there's a track record and a history of us doing that. And I think maybe very appropriate if we were to approve this case.
The smart people behind me are saying the term is status update, and we would be fine with a status update. That's doable for us. Within our financing, it's not going to be an issue. So I really appreciate the question, and I think we'll be okay.
If I remember, we did that, one very controversial case. It's Southern and Price. What was the big bar? It was the relocation of the... Nita's Hideaway. There we go. See, all the old timers are nodding their heads. Yeah, and we did that with Nita's Hideaway because they did live music inside, but bled into the neighborhood. So, and they came back and we saw if they performed as though they said they would. So,
Other questions, comments? If not, then we'll close this portion and open it for commissioner comments. Anyone? Commissioner DiDomenico.
well, I'll weigh in. About 5 or 6 years ago, the kind of the most analogous case that we've had is at Baseline and Rural, where the corner gas station convenience store, and I think, Ryan, you actually ran that case, where a gas station, an automated car wash was added to that gas and convenience store in front of the Whole Foods anchored shopping center, so exactly a mile away on a similarly trafficked intersection. and that was approved and went in. That shopping center, we went back and polled the owner, and to their surprise, there was no negative impact to the shopping center tenants. Right directly behind the car wash was a Starbucks with an outdoor patio that really said they couldn't hear. But it was not at the scale that this car wash was. You know, it's a smaller operation, but it was a very heavily trafficked site because of the convenience store and gas station. So that was the precedent 5 or 6 years ago in this neighborhood for that.
Commissioner Summers.
Really, I have my personal experience to go on, and I use a car wash, I think, similar to this. It's, you're right, most of us don't remember what they're called. This one is a clean-free car wash, and the vacuums are not much of a concern. The blowers, however, are really loud, and you know, that is a major concern for me here. I understand the noise study, I appreciate it. I also acknowledge that there's a fire station that's really close that you're probably hearing a lot of noise from too. But just because there's a lot of noise doesn't mean that we can add to it and everything's just copacetic. So I'm going to have a real hard time supporting this in this location. The car washes are absolutely needed. Proximity to the neighborhood in the residential properties is probably the biggest concern that I've got.
Commissioner Johnson.
I would like first to say that I appreciate the community coming out, and from both sides of the aisle, it's great to hear what your perspective is from neighbors on both sides of the issue. I regularly use a similar car wash product, although if you saw my car you might disagree, but the stacking issue, or the stacking setup at this site is far superior to the one that I go to, and I haven't really experienced an issue with the one that I go to. So I don't see that as an issue in this particular case from my personal experience. One of the other items from a noise perspective is from the left side of this screen and kind of juxtaposing the overhead, the aerial, that shopping center will somewhat dampen, I think, the impact to the homes behind that shopping center coming from that car wash. And I don't recall if it was stated where those noise measurements were taken, but if those were taken in the backyards or if they were taken close to where the sound would be coming from the blowers. But I think that I don't know that that's going to be a huge issue for those neighborhoods that are directly behind that area. I appreciate the recycling and the fundraising components. I think those are positive for the area. And as somebody asked, if I lived in the neighborhood, I would support this. So I'm planning to support and vote in favor of this project.
Anyone else? Vice Chair Lyon?
I'd just like to take one quick moment to say thank you to everyone who came and spoke, and say congratulations, because everyone did a marvelous job of being respectful, and I think this has been a very good meeting. Thank you. So my own experience, I run down the canal past the aforementioned car wash on Kyrene and Baseline. I take my dogs to Wiggles and Wags, which is part of this shopping complex here, and inside where they keep the dogs is amazingly loud when you go inside, but you walk outside of the store and you don't hear much. I drive this intersection. I know the traffic's there. In my judgment, that car wash at Kyrene and Baseline is just not loud at all. I run past it, I drive past it. yes, you can hear it, but I don't find it to be a big problem. I don't think the noise from this establishment will be a big deal. We could wish for whatever business we want here. I want someone to open a place where I go and get free hot apple pie and take a nap on a couch. But no one has presented that business yet. Tom's going to open it. I think this is a good business. I mean, they're very environmentally conscious. They've taken a lot of extra measures to make sure that this is environmentally friendly. The bus lane pull-off is going to actually free up a traffic lane some of the time, which I appreciate. I hate being stuck behind a bus. I just think it's a good project and a good business. We'd all like the ultimate business to show up in our neighborhood, but I think this is a good business, and they've taken real steps to be respectful and to make the business as good as they can in the location. I think if it is built, you'll be surprised at how good it is as a neighbor. I will be voting to support the project.
Other comments? Commissioner Brown.
I can agree with some of what David just said, Commissioner Line. I think the noise will be marginal as far as perceptible. It is a major intersection. There's a lot of traffic, However, I cannot support the building just based on the bulk and the appearance of the main structure is just really close to the street and tall, unnecessarily tall. The traffic, the use, the history of the site, indicates that a auto service use is historically correct, has been accepted in the past. I think the traffic will be improved by the reduction of driveways in terms of safety, but the appearance of the building itself I find to be subpar.
Commissioner DiDomenico.
Question again for staff that I forgot. During testimony, the adjacent property owner and counsel for same mentioned that if this was to be approved and built, that there's no cross easements required between the two parcels. And I think I read something in our packet that said that they would move to close off access to the two interior drives. How does that impact this development from the city's perspective?
The two driveways that are shared with the surrounding shopping center are not necessary for circulation on the Quick Quack project site. The driveways that would remain off of Baseline and McClintock would be sufficient. The applicant showed those shared access points because they exist today. They were not able to show evidence of a cross-access agreement, and we proceeded knowing that those driveways, shared driveways, may not exist in the future. So the staff's recommendation of support or of approval is regardless of whether those shared access points exist or not.
Thank you.
Other comments? We have 3 items before us. There are 2 use permits and the development review plan. I would like to ask the applicant if they're, to address some of Mr. Brown's concern, if you'd be willing to perhaps continue the design case to look at the bulk issue, if you will.
Is it the height that's the question, Commissioner Brown? Is that the concern?
Commissioner, turn on your microphone.
Yes, it's the appearance of the building.
So it's the sign, the duck, or it's the design of the building?
The height and the design of the building, I think, is subpar. The faux stone materials, I understand that desire, and that's something we see a lot on commercial work. But the large yellow walls that are just high, they're just high for the sake of being high, I think are bad street frontage for the public.
Yeah, I think we've done everything that staff's asked in terms of design. I don't know what else we'd change. I'm not. I don't have a proposal for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, that said, I will, Commissioner Brown.
Can I suggest that we break this into 3 votes?
Yes.
Because I think more than one might pass, but one will not. Well, maybe not.
Right. And actually, I was going to suggest we do that.
Thank you.
I think that's reasonable because I think we have some conditions that need to be added in. So the first item we're going to vote on will be for the use permit to allow a car wash in the PCC1 zoning district. Vice Chair Lyon.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the application for a use permit to allow car wash in the PCC1 zoning district for a Quick Quack Car Wash.
Would you like to amend that to include the hours?
Amended to include an amendment that hours of operation are between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m.
Would you also consider an amendment that would require them to come back and revisit the approval of the use permit in 6 months?
Based on noise?
Based on meeting all 5 tests.
5 tests.
Chair, Commission members, we have a standard condition of approval we can read out to you that we typically use for certain similar cases and see if that's something you agree with.
Would you like me?
Yes,
read
please.
The applicant shall return to the Development Review Commission within, it could be either 6 months or 1 year of opening for a review of compliance with the conditions of approval.
Go ahead, Commissioner Summers.
So can you just help us understand what happens if they're not in compliance and it's too loud?
If the commission determines that they're not in compliance, the use permit could be revoked.
I would like to amend my motion to include the conditions as stated by Ms. Karen Stovall.
Could you clarify if the review would be either 6 months or 1 year from opening date?
Okay, good point. I will say 6 months. We can change it again if everyone dislikes that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor that would approve the use permit for the car wash use in the PCC1 zoning with 2 additional requirements, hours to not exceed 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and that the case will come back to us for review in 6 months for compliance. Is there a second to that motion?
Second, Madam Chair.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Lyon, seconded by Commissioner Amorosi. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed, and that passes 7-0. Oh, you're opposed. I'm sorry, 6-1 with Commissioner Brown in the dissent. The next, we will be voting on a use permit to allow the parking maximum for the new building. Do I have a motion to approve that use permit?
I move to approve that use permit.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Brown, seconded by Vice Chair Lyon. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes 7-0. The third motion is for approval of the development plan review. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the development plan review for PL 170240.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Amorosi, seconded by Vice Chair Lyon. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? And that passes 5-2 with Commissioners Brown and DiDomenico in the dissent. The last item on our agenda, staff announcements.
Madam Chair, for January 9th meeting, currently we have a request for a zoning map amendment and PAD and DPR for Farmer Townhomes on 612 South Farmer Avenue, a request for a general plan density map amendment, zoning map amendment, a planned area development, and a development plan review for Alliance Broadstone Rio Salado at 2325 East Rio Salado Parkway, and a zoning map amendment, PAD, and a DPR for Park Place at 1201 East Apache Boulevard. And there may be one potential agenda, or one or two potential agenda item included or added, one being potentially the Apache and Oak adaptive reuse project and the accessory dwelling unit, that ordinance that Ryan had proposed. Okay.
January 9th. Thank you. I'd like to wish all the commissioners and staff and everyone in the TV Channel 11 audience a happy holiday season, and see you all next year.